Three of us, fish chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's 3 minutes past 6, ladies and gentlemen, and it is Friday, and it is, of course, a beautiful, gorgeous, sunny day. It's been a beautiful, gorgeous, sunny week, actually. We should count ourselves very fortunate as we step into spring, with a spring in our step. But wait, there's something amiss. As you look at the papers this morning, they're all a bit doom and gloomy, I'm afraid. Bog off Trump is what it says on the front page of The Sun. Meltdown, front page of the Daily Mail. The Telegraph talking about we should be more like Singapore. That's according to Jeremy Hunt. It was all right for him. Meanwhile, apparently £2 trillion has been wiped off the stock market. Donald Trump's calamity of tariffs on all sorts of goods. The FTSE 100 down 1.55%. Doesn't sound like a lot. The DAX down 3.01%. The Nikkei 225 down 2.77%. The oil price down 7.38%. Well, that's good, isn't it? Doesn't that mean petrol should be cheaper at the pumps? Very possibly. Bob Seeley's here. He'll explain it all for us. Very good morning to you, Bob. Nice to see you. We've got lots of other things to do. The good news is, up in Luton, where the airport is, they're going to expand it. So you'll be able to fly... I mean, it's the worst airport in Britain, right? But they're now going to be able to make it bigger. So it'll be the biggest, worst airport in Britain. I don't know whether that's a good idea or not, but certainly doesn't seem to fit in with the net zero credentials of this particular government. We'll talk about that. The Birmingham rubbish situation is now looking more and more like it's 1979, and I'm old enough to remember what that was like, actually. We're going to talk about the hawk. You know, the hawk that's in the village up near Luton as well? That's been finally caught by somebody who put a cage in their garden and managed to get a hold of it. Prince Harry's in the news as well, because he's slamming the woman who says that he bullied her and he was racist towards her. He's saying it's all a pack of lies, and we'll find out exactly what that is all about as well. Also, the Times have got a story saying there's a wasted generation of 500,000 people who've basically never had a job. Extraordinary stuff. It's 4 minutes past 6. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Oh, and by the way, it's apparently the 5th anniversary of Kier Starmer becoming the leader of the Labour Party. So we might celebrate that, or maybe just commemorate it, perhaps. Bob, very good morning to you. Yeah, commiserate the misery.
Black armband on.
Great. I mean, there was plenty of black armbands going around this morning. Lots of the front pages going on about the stock markets. I've got a very different view of all of this, but tell us what you make of it all so far.
I think that Trump is probably going to be really despised and hated in America, and I give it a year, 15 months tops. I think he's... Look, the way, if you've got a bad trading relationship with somebody, like China, which abuses the system, which is the second largest economy in the world, which is still classed by the World Trade Organization as a developing nation, you deal with individuals. What you don't do is blow up the entire post-World War II system that he has now done this week. Even for countries like Australia, like the UK, where in goods the US runs a positive balance, they are absolutely trashing that relationship. It's breathtakingly stupid. And I think from Russia and Ukraine through to global trade, I think, I'm sorry, Trump has proven what a disaster he is.
Well, I mean,
I think it's bad for Trump.
Doesn't it remain to be seen how that all plays out, though? Because at the moment, for example, I mean, he would say, well, what we're trying to do is stimulate growth in the United States of America and the hell with the rest of the world.
But hold on.
And that's what he'll do.
Yeah, but hold on. Growth has actually been doing pretty well in the US in the last few years. That growth is where you get a low-tax environment. What he's doing is basically destroying all the international supply chains that have developed in the last 20, 30 years.
Is he, though? That's the point. I mean, you say he's destroying them, but I mean, do you really think people will stop buying Scotch whisky? Will they stop buying Range Rovers if they want to buy a Range Rover?
Scotch whisky for individual things, for individual price elastic stuff, where you could charge a lot more and people will still pay, like Scotch whisky, very possibly, especially compared to French brandy, which is even worse. But hold on.
But that's not going to impact on Americans that much, is it?
Well, hold on, Scotch whisky will cost a lot more. So if you're competing against bourbon, you might actually. If you're competing against brandy, you might do better because your tariff rises.
Yeah, but you just said you're going to destroy the supply chains. That's a supply chain.
Well, no, but not for no, sorry. I mean, whiskey is a single thing. You make it in a distillery in Scotland.
Well, when you say supply chains, then what do you mean?
For manufactured goods.
Right.
Like manufactured goods, like cars, like steel.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Trump he slapped 25, was it 45% tariffs on aluminium. Aluminum is the US
25%,
coming from Canada. Okay, because he wants to stimulate aluminium production in his own country.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will. But in about 5 years' time, when they build the plant, right now all it does is put massive costs onto American consumers and destroy. Look, I mean, if the world goes into recession, then because of this, or aids to a potential recession in Europe and elsewhere, I don't see how that is good for the US.
But this is the trouble, though. People project it. I mean, we're getting all this stuff this morning about the stock market has collapsed around this idea of tariffs, right? But the stock market is there to make money. You know as well as I do that there'll be people sitting there this morning buying themselves new Ferraris because of all the money they made by selling short stock yesterday, and it will all come back.
Great.
And the whole mixture of the melange of finance in capitalism just goes around.
But you're assuming shake up and everything will just get back into a new and improved system.
I'm not saying new and improved. I'm just saying it's not the end of the world.
No, it isn't.
It's just the way the business works.
I'm sure there were people buying Cadillacs in 1929 as well, when the stock market crashed. But this is not a good thing.
Yeah, but you're not suggesting surely that this is going to create another depression like 1929.
Well,
see, this is when you become a politician.
No. Sorry. I'm not being that wasn't a literal. That was a metaphor.
Yeah, but people listen to what you say, Bob. You're a politician, so people take you seriously, right? Now, when you say things like that, people go, "Oh my God, this politician who was the Tory member for the Isle of Wight just more or less said there's going to be another depression like 1929."
I didn't say that. It was a colourful way of trying to make the point that even in a collapsing market or a declining market, there will still be people making money.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean...
Which is not to say the market's collapsing.
No, not the worker who's lost his job. Not the Rust Belt worker who's just lost his job.
Well, there's a lot of workers losing their jobs in this country, not because of Donald Trump, but because of bloody Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. I mean, that's a far bigger threat.
I agree, and I'm sure that they will use this and blame this for the jobs that have been lost through Reeves and Starmer's incompetence. That is a different thing. You're asking me, is this good? No, I don't think it is. I think it's really bad. The world trading system is not perfect, and China is the great abuser of it. So you deal with one country, but if you're running a goods surplus with countries like Australia and Britain, you have to be pretty stupid to start sticking tariffs on that.
Also, you know as well as I do as well, that an awful lot of what Donald Trump does is performative, and much of the tariff war that he's had going on with Canada and Mexico, it goes in and out of a door. One day he's got a tariff on Mexican cars, the next day he doesn't, right? One day he has tariffs on Canada, the next day takes them off. You know, we already know that in the British situation, there's a conversation going on at the moment, which might mean that the 10% or the 25% on cars disappears.
Some of this may get lifted. You're absolutely right, and we can't see further down the. You can't see in the weeks and months and years ahead. However, he is assuming that his administration is assuming that these things are going to be in place for years, not briefly. And just look at what's happening in the Pacific. Japan, South Korea. who are already being hit by this are now reorientating their relationship to China.
Yeah.
This is a disaster for American leadership.
And we've just sold off the Chagos Islands.
For American leadership globally.
Well, it may be, in your opinion. JCB on page 8 of the Mail.
Yeah.
But again, but you say it because you're, again, taken seriously as a politician. People will go, oh, my God, this is a fact then. Is it a fact that the world is dying? That the trade wars all over the world are going to result in everything being more expensive and I'm going to lose my job? They might think that. Well, but I don't think it's true. JCB planning its first big British expansion into the United States of America. So they're building a big plant in Arizona, I think. And they're going to build an even bigger plant in Arizona. And that's exactly what Trump wants people to do. So that shows to me that it's working. So there's going to be more jobs in Arizona.
Right. So you're saying that this was a result of Trump's tariffs?
Well, I'm saying that certainly would look like it, wouldn't it? It's an indication.
Well, no, because this thing, you can't. No, they're not going to make a decision about that in a day.
Well, no, but they were already planning to build a
so they were already planning to build
but they're now going to build a bigger plant as a result of the tariffs.
So there may be no correlation at all, or a modest one.
No, I think there's definitely a correlation because he was quoted yesterday as saying we're now going to build a bigger plant.
But they were planning to do it anyway. They're just going to make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Absolutely, but I mean, if the British economy was perhaps a more hospitable place for business, maybe they'd be building it here.
Yeah, okay, but now I think, with respect, Mike, you are conflating two things. You're conflating the incompetence of Reeves and Starmer and this great solicitor Reynolds with all the with this.
Yes,
they are separate things.
They are separate things, but they're not unconnected.
No, the incompetence of Trump, and he is incompetent.
I don't think he is.
Sorry, I think Trump is going to end up being reviled. That is my belief, and I think it's going to be very damaging.
Well, he's more popular now in a poll that I saw yesterday than he's ever been, even more popular than when he was elected.
Let's give it a year.
People in America like people who like America.
Yeah,
they like people who wave the flag and who do all the things that some people in this country find a bit abhorrent because they're not proud of their country. Americans are very proud of their country, and they love people who sing about, let's make America great again. It's popular.
And I quite agree. I love it. I wish we had a bit more of that here. I quite agree. However, I think he's a demagogue and a fool, and I think he's going to get unstuck. That is my gut feeling, and I think he's very bad for the world. And the price of the stuff that we like, the anti-woke, the anti-DEI, the patriotism, it's coming at a very, very high price. And when Americans realise that they're losing their jobs because of Trump, they will change their opinion.
If that starts happening, then maybe you'll be right. But there's no sign that that's happening at the moment, and there's no indication that it will happen.
It's been 24 hours, and all the indications are that it will happen, because if you collapse a global trading system, you're going to cause massive instability.
But again, he hasn't collapsed the global trading system. He's just put some tariffs on, which everybody else has put on. Okay. For example, when we left the European Union put tariffs on us. The world didn't collapse. The global economy didn't collapse. The trading between Britain and Europe didn't collapse.
No,
it's just part of doing business.
But we negotiated a free trade deal.
Yeah, so and that's what he wants other countries to do.
We negotiated to get rid of those tariffs. No, he doesn't. He basically thinks, sorry, that's just, if you look at what he says very specifically, if you run a trade surplus with America, you are cheating America. Okay, that's his definition. Anyone who runs a trade surplus is cheating America.
Yes, okay? As he says, is the European Union doing, because of 350 billion pounds.
Sorry, you can hate the European Union.
No, I don't. It's not about the European Union. What I'm saying is that he says that the Americans can't sell anything into Europe. They've got 350 billion trade surplus with the US, right? So that's not helpful to the US, is it? So he's not wrong to say that.
Okay, there are countries and entities with tariffs and who abuse the trading system. China is the worst offender, and the European Union, as we know, is a bit of a protectionist racket, especially on agriculture. I don't doubt that, but the way to deal with that is specifically through individual countries and not by hitting everybody.
Though, because
yes, of course you can.
How can you do a deal with Germany if you're not doing a deal with the EU?
Well, you deal with the EU.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But why are you then putting tariffs on Australia, on the United Kingdom, on Japan, on South Korea?
Because they put tariffs on America. Because all of those countries have tariffs on American goods. We have them.
Yeah, but hold on. Yeah.
So why should they not have them?
But they have tariffs on ours, and actually the tariffs, the only place that there's an imbalance really here is on agriculture, and actually it's in some goods it's more difficult for us to export into the US than here. So for a country like the UK, our very modest tariffs basically cancel each other out.
Yeah.
So why has he then slapped 10% additional tariffs on us? It makes no sense. What he's doing makes no sense.
But it makes sense to America.
No, it makes sense to him, because what he's saying is anybody who runs a trade surplus is a cheat.
Right.
It's economically illiterate.
I don't think it is, because also it's a negotiating position for him as well, because he's doing this in order for people to come to the table and say, we think these tariffs are a bit high, and he'll say, okay, well, what can you do for me? What can we do? What can you offer me? What can I offer you? And then they have a conversation, and then maybe they do a different deal.
Okay,
Let's have a listen to what he actually said. He was on Air Force One last night.
Those tariffs have come in, and every country's called us. That's the beauty of what we do. We put ourselves in the driver's seat. If we would have asked on some of these countries, almost most of these countries, to do us a favor, they would have said no. Now they'll do anything for us. But we have tariffs, they've been set, and it's going to make our country very rich.
But are you open to deals with these countries if they're calling you?
Well, it depends. If somebody said that we're going to give you something that's so phenomenal, as long as they're giving us something that's good. For instance, with TikTok as an example, we have the situation with TikTok where China will probably say, we'll approve a deal, but will you do something on the tariff? The tariffs give us great power to negotiate. Always have. I've used them very well in the first administration, as you saw, but now we're taking it to a whole new level because it's a worldwide situation.
So there he is admitting it's a negotiating position, effectively. And Trump has previously said, this is on JCB, there's going to be big tax breaks for companies that build factories in the US. So it makes a lot of sense for that to happen. If you're America, right, and people are building, cars in Mexico and selling them into the US market for undercutting the manufacture of American cars, surely it makes sense to encourage those companies to build their factories in America and build the cars there and give jobs to Americans. And that's what he's doing.
Yeah, but of course it does. But hold on, there's another point of view here, that everyone tries to attract business. So we do it, Europe does it, America does it.
We don't do it very well.
Okay, there's times when we have done. If you look at South Wales, Honda, Nissan, actually we invited and attracted in, so many of the world's major manufacturers.
Yeah, you guys did. I'm talking about now.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, the incompetent disaster.
I can't even say the second word. Sorry.
No, but over the last 30, 40 years, actually, we've done quite a good job of inward investment, and we've generally been one of the two top nations
in Europe.
for inward investment.
Yeah, Britain's been a great performer in Europe.
But look at what he said. He said people are going to do everything for us. Well, the Europeans are just about to slap lots of tariffs on America. I sort of hope we do.
But he doesn't sell much to Europe. That's the point. I mean, for example, one of the points that he makes is that people in America like to drive Mercedes, they like to drive BMWs, they like to drive, Audis. German cars very successful around the world. Nobody's driving American cars in Europe, right? Because they don't like them. So that's never going to be a problem for him. They can't.
But hold on, that's when he's slapping 25% tariffs on.
Yes, but they can't retaliate, because what are they going to retaliate with? Well, there's no American cars going in.
But they retaliate on lots of other things.
Like what, though?
Business services, goods. Look, there's lots of other things. It's not. There's the global economy is more than just about cars.
No, I know. I mean, I get that. But I mean, the Sun, for example, has done a whole list of things that you can buy that are made in America, right? And most of them, I would wager, hardly anybody wants. American vacuum cleaners. I mean, I haven't got an American vacuum cleaner review. Bud Light, the worst beer ever manufactured in the entire world. I'm never buying that, right?
Is it not? Have you ever had it? I've never.
Bud Light's awful. I mean, you might as well drink Lucozade.
Okay.
I mean, literally, you've got to drink about 28,000 cases of it before you feel it. Jim Beam, bourbon. Yeah. So what? We got Scotch, right? Combs, I don't own one. Peanut butter, I don't eat it. Okay, maple syrup,
you've got very combed hair. I think you do own a comb.
Well, I don't get it. I get somebody else combs it for me.
Okay, so somebody who you know owns a comb.
Yeah, but it's probably not an American comb. Mouth organs, don't need one. Beef, I've never bought beef from America in my life except for when I'm in America.
Yeah.
Guitars, I can't play one. Harley Davidson, not interested in motorcycle. Handkerchiefs, I mean, come on. Chopsticks. What? I mean, who's buying this stuff? Sorry? I just don't get it. I don't get the doom and gloom. The world's economy is not collapsing, okay, because of somebody's not buying chopsticks.
Right, let's see what happens.
Yes.
Sorry, for me, I think that as I say, the global system isn't perfect, but to trash it in this way, I think you're hurting a lot of. I think he's hurting a lot of people who voted for him, actually. I think he's not a good man for doing this. I think there are better ways of dealing with this. And what he says is categorically untrue. He says the markets are going to boom, the country is going to boom. Actually, the markets aren't booming.
Yeah, but you see, the trouble with the markets is that's another argument. You see, I detest the markets in all countries because they seem
I'm making a point about the fact that he's saying one thing and reality is different. whether you like or dislike markets.
Well, you just said in 24 hours, right? The markets will come back.
Well, maybe.
And they'll all make money on the up as well as they make it on the way down.
Maybe, but if this sparks a global recession, if this sparks a really big reordering that doesn't help us or the Americans, then it's not such a smart thing to do.
No, indeed.
You're
but I don't
thinking
believe
the
that it
world's
will
going to
do
go
that.
back as it was, and the problem is it isn't.
Well, maybe it'll be better. You know, I'm an optimist.
No, I think actually
because
already,
the world wasn't great before.
Sorry, I'm afraid to say, I think if you look at American power throughout the world, I think Trump is going to absolutely hammer it. And I think a lot of people now will turn away. You've got Mark Carney in Canada saying you've got a new... And I don't like particularly Mark Carney. I don't think he's a very good Bank of England chairman.
He was the hopeless Bank of England boss.
OK, right. But he is a Prime Minister of Canada. And
but he was never elected, so we'll see how long he lasts.
OK.
Seriously?
No, I get that, but you could... fine.
Sorry, I'm just a bit argumentative this morning.
No, that's good. That's what we're here for. But when you've got him saying we need a new global order without the Americans, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure I want Mark Carney's global order either, thanks. You know, what has he got to offer us? Canada?
Well, wheat.
Wood.
Aluminium.
Yeah, great. Anyway, listen, it's 20 minutes past 6. Not really people agreeing with you, I'm afraid, at the moment, Bob, but we'll come back to that. In a minute, we're going to celebrate 5 years of Kier Starmer. What a great day it's going to be. This is Talk.
People had their baby for £3 million. Now, I suspect that 4,000 mothers having their baby in the UK would have cost rather more than that, because that's less than £1,000 a birth. And I'd be very surprised if women went in, had a baby, stayed in 48 hours to recover, with discharge. I'd be very surprised if that cost the NHS a good deal more than £1,000 per baby.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 24 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham, and we are here all the way through until 10 o'clock. It's Gaff-prone Friday, of course, as well, so I'll have a few gaffs for you. It's also the 5th anniversary of Kier Starmer becoming the leader of the Labour Party, which may be something not to celebrate. Bob Seeley's here. We've been having a lively conversation about the tariffs, and I've got a voice note for you. A question from Mark for Bob. Have a listen.
Good morning, Mike. It's Mark in Lancashire. I've got a serious question for Bob Seeley. The European Union... they impose tariffs on virtually everything that comes into the European Union from countries outside the single market. They import lots of things and everything gets tariffs put on it. The European Union's tariffs have not caused a global economic meltdown and not caused a global Great Depression, though the European Union is a massive market. So why have European Union tariffs not caused a Great Depression, but Trump's tariffs will? Sorry, I just don't get it.
Okay,
so can you answer that?
Okay, firstly, two wrongs don't make a right.
Yeah.
Secondly, they've been factored in for decades. And thirdly, when it comes to its leadership role, the US is more important. I think, look, is the global economy going to collapse overnight? No, it's not. Is this going to help slide towards a recession in some parts of the world? Very possibly. Is that a bad thing for the world? Yes, it is. Is this a sensible way for dealing with this problem? No, it isn't. Do I love the European Union? No, I don't. I voted for Brexit. Do I wish it was less protectionist? Yes, I absolutely do, and it's one reason why we left. But if you look at what's happening in the world, this is harming American leadership, and American leadership is important for us.
But it may not be harming American leadership in America, which is where, as far as Donald Trump is concerned,
I think
it counts.
Yeah.
And at the moment, he is riding very, very high in the polls.
Yeah, I think he's an economically articulate demagogue, and I think it will hurt him in the future.
OK. Well, nobody agrees with that.
I think you can be a Conservative and dislike Trump.
Yeah.
I'm a Conservative who doesn't like him, doesn't rate him.
Right.
You're a Conservative who gives him more time because you like the fact that he's shaking things up. I think he's shaking things up in a bad way, and I think you can shake things up in a good way and a less destructive and a less damaging way.
Well, I was with my family yesterday, two members of whom now still live in America, one in Los Angeles in California, which is very left-wing for America, and one in Connecticut, which is less so. Both of them didn't actually even vote in the presidential election because they couldn't vote for Joe Biden, who was a complete and utter disaster.
Of course.
And they can't even believe that he was in power for 4 years,
No, I quite agree.
And they're both, nominally speaking, they would be voting Democrat, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't, and they're actually not discouraged by what Donald Trump is doing, which I find interesting, because they would otherwise normally be, like you, very critical of it, but they're not.
But will you wait and see what happens?
Because you're waiting and seeing, basically.
But wait and see what happens when the price rises go up. And the final factor for the gentleman caller who rang in, you are creating lots of uncertainty. So, you know, in the buying and lettings market in London, for example, there's been a slowdown anyway because of Labour. There's now going to be more of a slowdown, so it's going to hit the housing market here because you're creating uncertainty, and the markets hate uncertainty.
Well, if the house prices fall in this country, that would be a good thing, in my view, because it would mean that people could actually afford to buy them, which at the moment they can't. And London is full of people who can afford to buy them, from China, from Russia, and from all parts of the world where they've got money.
The Russians have left. So what you're saying is a recession helps some people. Yes, it does.
Well, I'm saying the house prices are too high.
It hurts.
No, but house prices are too high in this country, and if they fall, that would be a good thing, in my view.
OK.
Right. Let's celebrate Kier Starmer. We put together a little montage for you of his 5 years in office.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner. The relationship between our two nations has been one of collaboration. I'm anti-Trump, cooperation. But don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected, and enduring partnership. Never happened before. This is unprecedented. And I think that just symbolises the strength of the relationship between us. I'm delighted that the inspiring Nobel Peace, Nobel Prize winner.
True democracy is citizen-led. We demand a people's house!
This project has always been about fixing the foundations of our country.
It must be really incredible to be part of building, I mean, actually here, not just building. Smash the gangs to smash the people smuggling gangs.
Could you please join me when I say 5?
That man is not allowed in my pub.
4.
That's assault.
3.
That man is not allowed in my pub.
2.
Get out of my pub. Go on.
1.
Get out of my pub.
Yay! It worked.
Deary me. And this is where we are, I'm afraid. What an absolute nightmare we've got. We'll come back to what's going on inside of Kier Starmer's head and what the Labour Party have been doing this week, what the Labour government have been doing. Let's move on to Prince Harry, shall we, this morning, because he's attacking the blatant lies of this charity boss. This is a story that's been running for a few days now. Sophie Chandulkar, the leader of this Centre Bali charity, has basically accused the Duke of bullying, accused him of using sort of racist language, colonial language. I mean, it's his worst nightmare, isn't it? Because this is a guy guy who supposedly, you know, spends his life fighting for justice and racial equality and all the rest of it. Yeah. He's now saying in a statement that basically what has transpired over the last week has been heartbreaking to witness, especially when such blatant lies hurt those who have invested decades in this shared goal. Well, he's invested decades in this shared goal, but then he just jumped ship. He just decided to resign, didn't he? As soon as the crap hit the fan.
I mean, look, I don't know what the ins and outs of all of this is, but it's just him and Meghan, they do seem to fall out with people, don't they?
Yeah, they do. There's an awful lot of people they fall. In fact, there's nobody they haven't fallen out with.
Pretty much, they fall out with pretty much everybody, especially if she decides.
Her Majesty.
Yeah,
we call her.
Her True Majesty.
Yes, the real Queen.
Especially if she decides that they need to be fallen out with. So yeah, I mean, I think it's powerful. Of course, a virtue signaller gets basically a taste of his own medicine.
And now the Charity Commission are actually opening a regulatory compliance case because they think that there's something that needs investigating, which is a really bad look for him.
It's not a good look. It's not a good look, and I just, you know, genuinely, I feel sorry for him.
I mean, I think people used to feel sorry for him, but they don't so much anymore because he's looking more and more like a sport brat who doesn't really know his place in the world. Yeah, I mean, I think for me that was not as you say, that's not new. No, I mean, it's yet another sort of silly scandal. Basically, I mean, is it around her and he's just a victim of her? I'm not. I don't really think so. I'm not quite sure of the dynamic. I mean, I think it's quite a big organisation.
She feeds his worst instincts.
Right. I mean, we're talking about an organisation that employs 540 people. Yep. You know, she says that basically he wasn't doing anything for them for about the last 5 years. Yep. Because he'd been so kind of convinced that he was working in America and Canada
or
and all
not
that.
Working in America.
Or not working. And so he'd kind of left it to rot on the vine by the sounds of things. Yeah. And she was concerned that he wasn't really doing enough to raise money for it. So and the only time that they did try to make some kind of fundraising effort, it was due to the promotion of Meghan as opposed to the promotion of you know, kids with AIDS in Africa.
Well, that's pretty par for the course, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah. So I think it sounds to me as though he's been sort of neglectful of it.
Where is the colonial language coming in? Is that because he speaks English?
No, apparently that accusation came because of the way that he wrote a letter to her, apparently, in which he said that you know, he wanted her basically to big up Meghan and to say that the incident in the polo match where where Meghan pushed her out of the way so that she could stand next to Harry was actually no problem at all, and you know, we shouldn't be fighting about it, blah 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 blah. You know, so she said that he used sort of imperious and colonialist language in the letter.
Oh please!
I don't know. I haven't seen the letter.
I suspect that's sort of silly, hurty feelings.
Could be.
If you want to get a profile nowadays.
Well, it could be, but it wouldn't matter if it was somebody else. But because it's him, if he's accused of using that kind of language.
But what kind of language? I suspect. I mean, look. To be fair, I'm not his biggest fan. I'm certainly not her biggest fan. But I suspect that they're just throwing some mud at him now because their relationship's fallen out.
Well, and he's resigned as the head of Centre Barley, which was supposed to be the charity set up in honour of his own mother. Yeah. You know, it doesn't sound like he's really there for the long haul, does it?
No, it doesn't. And it certainly sounds like if it's not in her interest, it doesn't happen.
No, exactly right.
Hey ho.
Oh well, never mind. Let's get rid of that one. Coming up, we're going to talk about Luton Airport. You know, what was that advert they used to do? It was the Chinzano ad, wasn't it?
Chinzano, Luton Airport, the song.
Yeah,
Luton
Airport. When you wafted here from Paradise, you goes, no, Luton Airport. That's right. We've got a voice note from Ben.
Morning, Mike. Early first message. Your guest this morning. Anyone with an attitude like that about Trump rings alarm bells for me. Trump is absolutely amazing. I wish we had politicians in our country, the UK, that were even 5% as good as him. Have a great day. Keep up the great shows.
Thank you, Ben.
I'm not popular, am I?
No, you're not. I mean, you don't mind that, though.
No, I don't, because actually I think Trump is not a good man. He's not a good human being, and I think he's bad. He's bad for the UK. Do I want politicians to do stuff? For sure. Did we do enough stuff? No, we didn't.
Here's a note from Lammy, not David Lammy, I hope. Has Bob looked at US bond prices and the dollar? They're falling. That means the price of imports will be cheaper for Americans to purchase, surely. Okay. Interesting point.
Let's wait and see.
The world turns.
Let's wait and see.
Now, it's Gaff Prone Friday, as we like to call it, so let's have a look at the first gaff of the day. Here's Julie Hartley-Brewer.
Genuinely, I thought she was going to have a nervous breakdown, full-on breakdown. She was so angry with everybody. Get that woman off the train, she's blocking the door. It was hilarious. But anyway, Andrew, tell us about what you think about these tariff trumps. Tariff trumps is a completely different thing.
Yeah, you've got a peach impediment this morning.
OK, well, fair enough. Anyway, coming up, we're going to talk about Luton Airport and why this government, which is net zero obsessed, wants to expand it. Who knew? 6:34.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:36. I'm Mike Graham, and this, of course, is the home of common sense, although some of you are suggesting that Bob Seeley doesn't have any. That's very harsh. I'm not having that. Can't talk to our guests like that. Let's talk about Luton Airport. Apparently, despite the fact that it's a very sort of schizophrenic government, this, isn't it? Because you've got, on the one hand, Ed Miliband, who's all about net zero, wants us all to stop flying, wants us all to stop eating meat, wants to build the biggest solar... There's another story, actually, today about the biggest solar farm ever being built on some ancient roadway from 600 BC. But they now want to give the green light to expand Luton Airport, which I think is a, very schizophrenic idea. I mean, I'm all in favour of flying. I love flying. I want people, I want people to be able to fly and make money and commercially travel and all the rest of it. But I don't like Luton Airport, I must say.
Right. Okay. There's two issues here: Luton Airport and the hypocrisy of Labour saying one thing in opposition and doing another thing in government. On the Labour stuff, look, I mean, are they doing the right thing? Probably, The airports need to be expanded. I think for me, what gets me about them time and time again is that they say one thing in opposition and do another thing in government. All politicians are at risk of doing that. The Labour Party seem to specialise in it.
Well, it's like these Labour MPs who are petitioning for a new airport in Kashmir,
unbelievable,
who don't want the third runway at Heathrow.
So they oppose the third runway at Heathrow, but let's spend £1 billion building an airport in Mirpur, where most of the a lot of grooming gang males come from. It should be said.
Right.
So you actually don't want an airport there.
No,
in fact, an airport anywhere else.
Well, as somebody suggested, you maybe have just an arrivals terminal and no departure terminal.
that would be good.
Be able to come back.
There's hypocrisy and double standards here, as ever, from the Labour Party, but that's, pontificating lefty politicians for you. On Luton Airport, we have a different opinion.
Right.
I actually quite like it. I think it's very convenient.
You use it quite a lot?
Well, if I'm flying back from Ukraine or somewhere, if I have a choice between Stansted, basically the train takes an hour from Stansted.
Right, Stansted's not even anywhere near London.
As you say yourself, it's halfway to Scotland. Luton, it's pretty quick to get through. It's a bit small, it's pleasant enough, it's basically a slightly smaller Stansted. There's now a connection, a little monorail thingy to the railway.
Because that was a real problem. One of the reasons I stopped using it was because there were a couple of times I'd got to the Luton Parkway station and then you'd stand around for about 20 minutes waiting for a bus.
It's now very quick, as every few minutes there's a monorail thing, you're on the platform, and if you live anywhere in North London, it's actually it's a quick line into St Pancras on Thames Link, and you go to West Hampstead.
I mean, when I used to work in Scotland and I'd fly down to London quite a lot, 2 or 3 times a month, I used to try and fly into City Airport if I could, which was really good.
Really convenient.
Especially if I was working in Canary Wharf.
It's good. The problem is with City Airport, it's not actually that convenient because it's on Docklands Light Railway and it takes another half an hour to get into. Why on earth did they build the Elizabeth line stop on the other side?
I think so. Yeah. I haven't actually been on the Elizabeth line ever, so I don't know what that's like. People say it's great.
The Elizabeth line is lovely, but why on earth do you not build a stop underneath City Airport, but you build a stop half a mile away, unconnected to the airport?
And you can go to Stratford on it, so but that doesn't really help. I mean, again, I one time I was going to use it. I flew back into Heathrow, and I came downstairs, and there was an Elizabeth line or a Heathrow Express, and I said to the guy, which one should I take? And he said, well, the Heathrow Express is much quicker. So I just took that because
it is. I mean, it is okay. When I'm going to Heathrow, you get to Tottenham Court Road. It's about 40 minutes on the Elizabeth line. Right. Once you get out of Paddington, because it stops at about 4 or 5 stops en route.
That's the problem.
So it's not quick, but then it's not cheap. If you're trying to save money, it's a bit cheaper because you're paying a tube rate rather than Heathrow Express rate. Right. Although Heathrow Express not that bad if you've got a Veterans Rail card, it's quite cheap.
It is, I mean, it's not bad at all. Page 23 of the Times, this solar farm, this is another one, 259-acre solar farm in a place called Long Sutton is going to be as big as 160 football pitches, is intended to power 30,000 homes for 40 years. It's been approved by Hart District Council. Problem is, it's being built on a roadway called the Harrow Way, which dates back to 600 BC, and even the Green Party are against it. The Green Party have said it's an abuse of the climate emergency.
I mean, the other problem with all these solar panels is regardless of the issue with this roadway, is that firstly they're very often on prime agricultural land. So hold on, there's an issue
there, definitely.
And secondly, they're all built with slave labour.
Right.
I mean, half of these solar panels come from...
Miliband's even admitted that, hasn't he?
Yeah, so, effectively, we're accepting of slave labour. All these sort of pontificating lefties, we're now accepting of slave labour as long as it fits an ideological obsession of this government.
If, for example, they said to me, we're going to build a solar panel factory in Britain and we're going to create 2,000 jobs and we're going to make them here, I would go, great. Fine. But why can't we do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I think probably because the Chinese have nicked the IP and are undercutting, and what they're doing is that they're oversupplying and then dumping on the world market. This is a set pattern.
And that's what they do.
This is absolutely a set pattern.
But surely, if you want to, and if you go back to the tariff argument, if you want to stop them doing that, surely the best thing to do is to build the stuff in your own country, regardless of the price.
You're absolutely right. And look, I don't expect people to have listened to me as a backbench MP, but for the record, one of the things I was always banging on about, if anyone would ever listen, was the fact that you need to inshore your industry and you need onshore your industry, not offshore it, and you need to onshore or have a friendly route for your supply chain. So should we be sending all our manufacturers to manufacturing industry to China? No, of course we shouldn't. It's terrible for us.
Except we have been, haven't we?
Yeah, and I don't agree with it. It's a really bad thing. And it's actually bad. It's worse for the environment than building it here because the Chinese are building 2 coal-fired power stations every week. And we know the worst thing for the climate, is coal-fired power stations.
And with everything they build as well, and with everything they sell to us, they get wealthier, they get more powerful, they buy more land in the South Pacific, they encroach more in South America, they buy more mineral wealth in Africa, and they're killing the planet.
I agree, but the way to deal with that is not to slap tariffs on Taiwan, on Japan, on everywhere else in the Pacific and effectively force them into China's arms. The way to deal with China is to deal with China, not to trash the whole system.
Yeah, but it's to build in your own country as well, which is what he's trying to do. Let's go back to the front of the Telegraph. According to Jeremy Hunt, I don't know what you think of him, Kier Starmer must embrace Brexit freedoms to turn Britain into Singapore on the Thames. We've heard this before, haven't we? Singapore on the Thames. I thought that's what we were supposed to be turning it into.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure.
I'm not that keen on Singapore, to be honest.
I'm not. Why not?
I just think it's all a bit sort of technocratic. It's all a bit sort of gleaming and
it's very safe.
I worry that there's things underneath the surface that are probably not quite so good.
It's a very safe.
Well, I'm sure it's safe. So's Dubai. You're not going to get your watch nicked or your phone nicked in Dubai.
No, fair enough. OK, I'm not quite sure when people say copy Singapore, I'm not quite sure in what way they mean copy Singapore, but what we should be doing is taking greater advantage of Brexit. Yes, absolutely. Did we do enough of it? We did some of it in the last government, and there were lots of things happening, slightly technical stuff beneath the surface that were making a good difference. Did we do enough? Probably we should have done more. But
certainly there are people, I mean, like my taxi driver that drove me in this morning was just absolutely fed up to the back teeth of everything in the case. He said, the country's gone to rack and ruin. London's turned into a ghastly place. There's too many foreigners. It's too hard to make a living. Those of us, and we hear this all the time. People who work and pay tax, and they go, we're being taken advantage of.
Agree.
There's too many people doing nothing. I mean, the Times have got this story of a whole generation of young people who've never had a job.
I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the Twitter feed here. Mike, get Bob a hobby horse. He's been possessed by Ed Davey. The day that I'm possessed by Ed Davey, please somebody take me out and shoot me.
I mean,
I'm not disliking Donald Trump does not mean I'm into water sports.
No, indeed.
Or I've got a little plastic horse that I run around with. I just, I'm a conservative who thinks Trump is illiterate, immoral fool.
Not everybody will disagree with you in a bad way. Here's one from Simon. He says, whilst I think your guest is an excellent politician and the country is a poor place without him in Parliament, I have to say I disagree with his opinions on the Trump tariffs and businesses building factories out there. He is correct to say that JCB did not plan this overnight because of the tariffs, but a business will have known 12 months out that this was coming down the line and will have started to react and prepare 12 months ago, if not longer. Trump has promised massive tax breaks for companies to build, hence business will flock to America in the long run.
But getting people to build because you're making it attractive is different from trashing. It's different from trashing the system. So when this other person says Bob Seeley talking absolute tosh, I do not agree.
OK. Whilst I understand where Bob's coming from, says Nan in Wales, with Trump's tariffs, he's wrong. The markets will recover as soon as countries realise the USA will no longer be the bank of the world, and if you want a better deal, you can have one once you stop taking advantage. Donald Trump is rocking the slow boat to China, and it can't come quickly enough. I have nothing but admiration for him.
Look, there we are. OK, with a certain section of your listeners, obviously they're not going to agree. Let's see what happens. But right now, Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, we'll move on from that because let's talk about Sadiq Khan. Coming up after this, Sadiq Khan has been accused by Israel of propagating Hamas propaganda, which is rather an interesting charge. We'll look into why coming up after this.
It sounds obviously as though the Tories will go against it, but they've only got about 130 MPs. So all those Labour MPs are pretty much going to support this. What happens?
Do you think so? Or do you get a sense, I mean, this is what I saw, which I'm beginning to see discontent already within the Labour rank and file, because they can see that their constituencies are in peril. I think many of their constituents will be saying, look, I think most like-minded people will be saying this Chagos deal is a joke.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:49. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is the home of common sense, the place to come for conversations that you won't hear anywhere else. A lot of you have been disagreeing with Bob Seeley. We've got one here from Bev, who actually says, actually, I really like Bob Seeley. Yeah. I've never even heard people in Palestine calling it Gaza. I think they call it Gaza. But basically, the Israelis are saying that he is now spouting Hamas propaganda because when he says more than 50,000 Palestinians have been killed, it takes no account of most of those being Hamas combatants, which is what Israel says.
Yeah, and the fact is that these are Hamas combatants, but according to the Hamas-run health ministry, they're kids or their grannies. Right. They're not. I think he's
because there's a report that came out the other day which said that practically, I think 90% of them are in fact Hamas operatives.
Yeah, the Israelis are actually doing as good a job as they can of getting rid of Hamas combatants whilst minimising civilian casualties. I believe that.
Yes.
That is not meaning that this is not morally complex. It absolutely is.
Yeah, of course it is.
But I mean, the Hamas go out of their way to slaughter civilians.
Well, they've been killing people most recently because they've been demonstrating against Hamas, haven't they? And anybody who demonstrates against them gets murdered.
Well, 6 or 12 of them, they got tortured and then murdered, and their bodies were left outside their relatives as a warning. No, and the other thing about Sadiq Khan here is that he puts no context.
Yeah.
It's nasty Jews, nasty Israelis.
Yeah.
That's the implication. Yeah. That's the implication of what he says. The thing that gets me about Sadiq Khan, I mean, apart from the fact he's just dreadful, appalling mayor, and London is a much worse place under his leadership.
He's ruined London, no doubt about
he's
that.
a sort of whining sort of victim that people dislike me because of my religious or ethnic background.
Yes.
No. People don't care about that. People dislike him because he's a dreadful mayor who puts virtue signalling nonsense before delivering for Londoners, for delivering safer streets for women, kids, everyone, you know, for getting the tube working. The tube's a less pleasant place, and so many people say it, like your cabbie who drove you in this morning.
Exactly.
London should be the world's greatest city. It has got so much going for it. And under this dreadful man, it's just becoming worse.
And when you get a nice day, I was out yesterday just around the back of Waterloo, and it was lovely. There was a street kind of, you know, where there was loads of street food being sold. People were out walking around because it was lunchtime, you know, and it looked like the London that I remember. And it's the first time I've really been able to say that for ages, because I haven't seen that. And maybe, you know, there is still some hope for the place, but he's done his best to completely destroy most of it.
And it's not only that. If you look at Westminster Labour-run Westminster Council now, they're trying to encourage pubs in residential areas like Soho to have quiet evenings and quiet nights. And it's killing the pub trade. And London, that sort of fun London, is absolutely being ruined by the Labour
funny enough,
Party.
my son, who goes to University of Manchester now, he came down because we're all having this big family get-together, and he went out on Wednesday night. We'd all been out for dinner, but he decided he wanted to go out again. Went out with his mate at about 1 o'clock in the morning. Couldn't find anywhere to have a drink. You know, and it used to be, and I said, did you try Soho? And he's like, well, yeah, there wasn't really anywhere over there either, you know, because people now close early because there's no incentive to stay open because nobody's out, because half the people don't even go to work anymore.
Labour is killing, and Sadiq Khan, they're killing London. It's
they really are.
dire.
Speaking of pubs, there's an interesting story in the Telegraph where it says some pubs charging £8 for a pint, as well as changes to traditional drinking culture, mean that basically nobody buys a round anymore. You know, in my younger days, and yours as well, I'm sure, everybody would just, you know, they would get their round in. But now, if there's 4 or 5 of you, you're talking about sort of 35, 40 quid.
£6 a pint. That's pretty bad. Freshwater, I'll give a shout out to Freshwater Con Club. Pint of Guinness, £2.
2 quid?
Yeah.
How do they manage that?
So you can have amazing fish and chips at the Blue Crab.
Right.
England's best chippy,
This is the
in my
second
opinion.
time you've given them a plug. The last time you did it, you were accused of getting free fish and chips.
No, I wish. I probably should go there and say, "Where's my free fish and chips?" But super cheap fish and chips, £8.40 from Big Cod. Huge portion of chips, and then you get a Freshwater Con Club for a super cheap pint afterwards.
Very good. How can they only charge 2 quid? I mean, that seems to be even below how much you would pay for it in a supermarket.
Members Club.
Really? Absolutely amazing. Now, let's do the Migrant of the Day story, because this is what we always do here. And this is on page 10 of the Daily Mail. Rapist can't be sent back to Jamaica because of concerns over his safety. Apparently, he's a sex attacker from Jamaica. He entered the witness protection programme after his mother's evidence at a trial in the Caribbean led to a gang leader's conviction for murder. So, despite being an illegal overstayer in this country, jailed for serious sex crimes and violence, an immigration judge last month ruled his human rights would be breached if he was deported. So he gets to stay in Britain.
That's wrong. We need to get rid of the Equality Act, we need to get rid of the Human Rights Act, and then we need to deal with the ECHR. It's not one thing. There is a series of this sort of complexities that we need to unpick, and we need to do it. Because I think it is so appalling that the Home Secretary can't just say, get out.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about that story we mentioned already once on the top of the Times, which says more than 500,000 young people who are not working or studying have never had a job. And these are people who are called NEETs, right? Not in education, employment or training, not looking for a job, and a growing number of them citing sickness as the reason. 500,000. How are we going to get these people back to work, or just to work?
There's a lot of them. I think we have a lot of carrots, so maybe we need some more sticks. But if you sit in your arse, pardon my French, I think you need to be told, get a job, or, you know, stop assuming that other taxpayers are going to support you. I think the HMRC, I just think we have a government and a system that is after your money in every single way.
I mean, have you got any faith in this government cracking down on welfare? Because I don't.
No,
I just don't think
and again,
they can do it.
when people say the cuts in welfare, I'm sorry, this is just left-wing talking points. They are slowing marginally the rate of increase. So it's not a cut. It means that the rise will be slightly tapered. There's a slightly bigger rise, but the welfare spending is still going to continue on a surprisingly steep path.
Because
so
unless
it is simply untrue.
Unless you take it really by the horns and then say, right, if you're claiming that you're suffering from anxiety, I'm afraid that's not going to be good enough for you to get benefits, and you're going to have to go to work.
Absolutely. And I mean, look, we are going to have a nuclear option here, in my opinion. And the nuclear option is that when you have the next government, if it's a non-Labour government or whatever, guys, I hope it's Conservative, we'll see, that you simply cap the benefits budget.
Yeah.
So you force significant choices on who's ever running DWP.
Yeah.
And effectively, you look after pensioners because they paid in all these years, and you look after properly
Who
disabled.
Labour don't seem to like very much.
No, they hate them. They hate anyone who votes Tory. They hate. So pensioners, farmers, small businesses, anyone with a propensity to actually stand on their own 2 feet, have pride in this country. You know, no, they hate them. Okay, but you force decision. So you look after people who need to be looked after, pensioners, properly disabled, serious mental illness, for example. But everyone else, there are an awful lot of people now who are winging it, and you've got to get them off the system, and you've got to say you should go into work, but if you don't want to work, the taxpayer is not going to be scammed by you any longer. And I'm afraid to say that's a system. And so many of your listeners are listening to you in their cars going to work. You know, and they are fed up. Their taxes are going to support the wrong people in this country.
Well, my son, I mean, talking about America again, who lives in California, he was with me yesterday, and he lost his job a couple of months ago. Well,
what was he doing?
He was working in a car company, actually, but it was a very high-end car company in California. They were basically converting old Dodge trucks and Land Rovers into electric vehicles and selling them to massively high prices, $750,000, that kind of thing.
Wow.
But you could only sell 2 or 3 a year, and so the money kind of ran out. The orders didn't come in. Anyway, so like 2 weeks afterwards, he was already looking at jobs in other car companies, and he's got one. And he was explaining to my friend who lives here, you know, if you lose your job in America, you have to get a new one. You can't claim unemployment for more than 6 months. If you claim for 6 months, they say, well, we're not giving you any more money.
Yeah,
which seems to me to be perfectly sound.
I mean, I think we have a system where you can turn down too many jobs. So you can turn down maybe the first one, but I think you have to take a job. You know, you need to keep earning your income. And I think it's just incredibly unfair on everyone else. We are taxed at ridiculously high rates in this country, and it is absolutely stopping people.
Because there's an ever-diminishing number of people.
Yeah, you're discouraging people from working.
Well, there was a survey I think done, a study done the other day. 52% of people in this country are now reliant upon the government for their standard of living.
In some form.
Yeah.
And, okay, some of that is pensioners getting older, which is fair enough, but a lot of it is not.
Is not, yeah, absolutely right. We didn't get round to the final middle-class story of the day. I'm just going to mention it quickly, which is an African diet could work wonders for your health. And this is apparently a study that's been done in a magazine called Nature Medicine. And these are people who live on the slopes of Kilimanjaro. I mean, I don't think we're going to be...
But that's like saying a European diet. I mean, what they're talking about, sort of...
Well, berries and wheat and God knows what. I mean, I'm not having it anyway. I'm still going to go down to the steakhouse. That's that. Bob Seeley, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Enjoy your fish and chips and your cheap beer in the Isle of Wight. If only all of us could share in that wealth, that would be nice, wouldn't it? We'll be back with loads more after the news.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? And we'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12.60. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham, and the day looks splendid. It's another wonderful sunrise here at the top of the tower on the 17th floor of News UK. Don't forget you can get a Morning Glory podcast as soon as this show is over. Don't miss any part of it. If you've told your friends that they don't get up early enough to catch the 6 o'clock show, then don't worry. Check in with the Morning Glory podcast, and it's available where you get your podcasts all the time. We're talking tariffs this morning again, all over the front pages. It's all horror stories and doom and gloom. We've all lost money. Trillions have been wiped off the stock market. I'm sick to death of people in the stock market making money and then making out that somehow it's all a disaster. You know, they're all driving around in Ferraris and Aston Martins, and every single time the stock market goes down, they make money. Every time the stock market goes up, they make money. I'll tell you when they don't make money, when the stock market doesn't move at all. So the idea that somehow, as proposed by Bob Seeley there, that we're going to hell in a handcart and the whole world's trading system has been ripped up and exploded by Donald Trump, I'm just not buying it. You know me as well as I do. I disagreed with Bob. We did it in a very good-natured way. It's perfectly fine. A lot of you are having a hissy fit about Bob Seeley, which you're entitled to do because that's your opinion as well. But at the end of the day, he thinks one thing, I think another. I don't think this is as bad as the sort of establishment would have you believe, because at the end of the day, everything will settle down. And I really don't believe, as I've read out the numbers of things that you can have that you buy from America, that's not going to affect most people's lifestyles. Unless you're addicted to drinking bourbon and you can only drink bourbon and nothing else, I don't think it's going to bother you. If you really like American beer, then I'm very sorry for you. If you can afford to buy an American motorcycle or American car, very good luck to you. But I'm afraid I don't think most ordinary people in this country are going to be bothered one iota that Donald Trump is putting some tariffs on some cars that we're going to sell to the United States of America. Ben Habib's here. We'll find out what he makes of it all. 0344 499 1000. Sadiq Khan has been accused of being a Hamas propagandist by Israel. We're going to be talking about Prince Harry, of course, as well. Luton Airport is going to be expanded, according to the government. And also, we're going to talk about the migrant of the day. This time it's a Jamaican rapist who can't be sent back to Jamaica because it might not be good for him. Apparently, he might get killed by some gang members. Well, so what? Kill him. He's a rapist. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We'll also keep talking about the NHS this morning as well. We've got more stories about appointments being made, appointments being cancelled, and generally jiggery-pokery of the highest order. This is Morning Glory. It's the home of common sense. Let's get it on. Let's hear from Liam on tariffs.
Morning, Mike. Liam from Kent. On Trump's tariffs, your guest getting in a bit of a panic about, oh, it's going to destroy this, it's going to destroy that. No, it's not. I mean, so what? They're going to have to pay the same money for a Range Rover or a Bentley as we have to. Big deal. And do you know what? People saying like, oh, Rolls-Royce, Bentley. Rolls-Royce and Bentley don't sell cars at dealerships anymore. They sell them as a luxury lifestyle. You buy a Rolls-Royce once you've been out and bought a private yacht or something like that. I mean, he's putting America first, which is exactly what he said he was going to do. Great show, Mike.
Liam, thank you very much indeed. Just on a different subject, before we talk to Ben Habib, how about this from Natasha? Sorry, this is on the same subject. An early one, Mike. Sour grapes of the world. America's fed up with subsidising the world since World War II. And this is from Jay, who says, just to let you know about my local hospital. Yesterday, I was due an operation to remove an unknown lump from one side of my thyroid, as both sides have lumps, as the consultant only wanted to remove one lump at a time. It was cancelled in the afternoon, as the surgeon had complications on earlier operations. My severely disabled son also had his colonoscopy cancelled on the 4th of March and was on a fast-track 45-day maximum wait. No idea when either of our procedures are going ahead. I wonder where we are on the waiting list. Well, that's a very good point, and this is my point that I've been making throughout this week and last week, that there's something going on with the waiting list. I think people are being given appointments and then having them taken away, and then they get moved from one waiting list to another. That way the government can say, we're reducing the waiting list. Well, we'll see about that. Let's talk to Ben Habib, of course, a chairman of Brexit to Watch. Ben Habib, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Good to see you.
Good to see you. people are getting their knickers in a twist about Trump's tariffs. I'm not sure they need to. I mean, you know a thing or two about the stock market. You know, the stock market makes money either when it falls or when it rises. It doesn't make money when there's nothing going on. So I'm less concerned than some of the newspapers seem to be this morning that Donald Trump has kind of wrecked the world.
Well, what Trump has done is to readjust the long-term direction of how the American economy and other economies linked to it operate. And for the markets to react the way they've reacted, personally, I think it's an overreaction, because a lot of the countries that have had tariffs imposed on them actually can absorb those tariffs and continue to export goods quite happily to the United States. But we mustn't judge changing economic direction of travel by short-term market movements.
Right.
That would be a mistake. Just because the market has moved to protect itself, in a sense, taking the worst possible outcome and then putting it into share prices, does not mean that what Donald Trump has done is necessarily going to be wrong. And these tariffs are going to take 2 or 3 years before they start to show the benefits for the American economy and the adjustments required by other countries on which tariffs have been imposed to take effect, before we can really begin to judge what the correct share price of any given company will be. So I think that the market reaction shouldn't be taken too seriously. This change of direction in the way that America is governing its economy needs to be given 2 or 3 years before it's judged. And before I finish, I just say that this is a very well needed, much delayed, and in my view, welcome change of direction by Donald Trump. As you mentioned, effectively the US has been the buyer of all goods across the world, and that has not always resulted in prosperity and good for the world. And the most notable example of that is China, which on the back of exporting cheap cat to the West, including obviously the United States, it has gone to being a geopolitical military superpower.
Yeah.
It's on the back of our money that it's done that. And we've actually created geopolitical instability by the kind of free trade that's taken place over the last 30 odd years. And that needed to be corrected. We've also created geopolitical instability through the hollowing out of industries, critical industries, in the United Kingdom, in the US, in Europe, because we've been so keen to effectively export those industries to China and not protect ourselves by having the ability to produce in our own countries. And food, for example, is such an example. That may not be as far as China is concerned in the United Kingdom's case, but as far as the EU is concerned, we've offshored a lot of our food production in the same way because of this global free trade that everyone seems obsessed about. Whereas actually we would have been much better off supporting our farmers and frankly having tariffs on European goods coming into our country. And while I'm on that subject, you know, we've got this free trade agreement with the European Union, which comes in in the wake of theoretically leaving the EU, and before that we were obviously part of it. But I think that was a mistake. We should have used the opportunity to leave the EU to rebalance our own trade with it. We run a £100 billion deficit with the European Union. We've done that for years, before we theoretically left the EU, and we continue to run that deficit. And that's because the euro is an artificially weak currency. Germany's exports are flattered by it, and they're effectively dumping their goods on the UK. If we'd had the courage of our convictions, and our government was running the country with British producers in mind, British goods in mind, we would have imposed tariffs, frankly, on the European Union. And it's something I think we should consider doing. When you run that kind of large trade deficit, which is what effectively got Trump's goat in the end, and gets my goat as far as the UK is concerned, when you continually run trade deficits like that, you bring real pressure on your own currency. You bring real pressure on your own producers. You hollow out your economies. And that has to be that has to be corrected. And that is, therefore, in my view, a wholly welcome change of direction instituted by the Trump presidency. And we in the UK should be taking a leaf out of his book.
Well, it's very interesting, isn't it, that the European Union was one of the biggest moaning complainers yesterday because of the fact that Donald Trump was going to put tariffs on the EU. The EU puts tariffs on everybody. They also exploit many, many countries in the developing world and basically sort of rape them of all of their natural resources and tell them that they're going to buy up everything. Certain countries in Africa that I know about, Alex Phillips has told me about all of this in the past, where, you know, many of the countries in Western Africa in particular have got no choice but to sell everything that they've got to the EU, and the EU dictates the price, the EU dictates the terms, the EU takes everything from them and gives them hardly anything in return. They're a protectionist organisation, and for them to complain that you know, the American president has got the temerity to charge them a tariff is laughable, isn't it?
It's absolutely laughable, and I know the example, Alex, is referring to. Western African states have basically given over their fishing waters to the EU, which is fishing them dry. It takes a completely, and you know, bangs this drum of net zero, the importance of improving the climate, etc. And at the same time, it's completely destroyed our fish stocks in the Channel, and it's destroying the fish stocks of these Western African countries. The EU is an exploitative, mercantilist cartel.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Totally.
And we need to wake up to that. The fact that we run a £100 billion deficit with the European Union, that we've become reliant on it for so much of what we need in this country and what we should be growing in our own country, producing in our own country. We need to wake up to that, and we need to take action against the European Union. And to all those doubters who think the UK would end up in some kind of economic disaster if we did it, I say this: mitigate any reduction in trade with the EU that might come from tariffs on the EU. We're deregulating in the United Kingdom, ditching net zero, making our energy a hell of a lot cheaper, reducing taxes on the working class, reducing taxes on business, and supercharge the British economy. That's effectively what Trump is doing in the US. He's saying that's fine. You think prices are going to go up because I'm going to impose tariffs on these goods being dumped on the UK, on the US? Fine, take that. But actually, I'm going to cut taxes. I'm going to deregulate. I'm getting rid of stupid DEI, etc. And America will emerge as a much stronger economy. Of that, I have no doubt. There's one silver lining I just want to quickly mention, Mike, if I may, and that is the differential rate of tariff that Trump has imposed on the UK versus the European Union. And it made me smile. Obviously, some of our producers will have to now wrestle with that higher tariff. But what it effectively means, Mike, is that the UK will become a much more attractive trading country than EU member states. And I think we will, as long as Starmer doesn't do anything silly, we will benefit from European companies now relocating. Those companies in Europe which trade with the States, which wish to continue to trade with the States in the most cost-effective way, will, I think, very seriously be reconsidering their location and considering coming to the United Kingdom. This could be a real win for the United Kingdom as long as we play our cards right.
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty for me with our relationship with the US at the moment is that Kier Starmer is kind of, you know, standing, as it were, on the sort of lip of a volcano, because he doesn't really want to be friends with Donald Trump. No. And it's very obvious that he's just pretending to be friends with Donald Trump. And I think Donald Trump knows that because he'll be totally aware of what Starmer said in the past about him, what David Lammy said, you know, what other members of the Labour Party have said about him. And so, you know, he's a sort of faux friend, isn't he?
Well, what Starmer wants to do, we all know this because he said it repeatedly, is take the United Kingdom back into the EU. And I don't know if you remember this, Mike, but he was caught off camera in September 2023 when he thought he was off camera, but the cameras were still rolling, saying that if I were ever to become Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, I would align up so closely with the EU that you wouldn't be able to tell the difference of whether or not we were members. And but this absolutely throws a spanner in his works, because all of a sudden the attractive trading partner for the United Kingdom will be the US. We will be looking to the US as a result of companies relocating to the United Kingdom in order to deal with the US. We'll be looking across the Atlantic more in a more trading manner, if you like. Well, you know, our natural trading partner now will increasingly become the US, particularly if the European Union now imposes tariffs on the US, which it said it would do. So Starmer will be forced to start looking away from Brussels and start looking to Washington. And that's brilliant. That's fantastic. And in looking at Washington, he should also take a leaf out of Trump's book, the leaf that I mentioned of deregulation, lower taxation, ditching net zero. All of that will make the United Kingdom competitive. All of that will get our economy heading in the right direction. And these short-term market movements should basically be ignored.
Absolutely right. Just because I like you so much, Ben, I'm going to play you a little montage clip that we've made up to celebrate 5 years of Kier Starmer as leader of the Labour Party. Have a look at this.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner. The relationship between our two nations has been one of collaboration. I'm anti-Trump, cooperation. But don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected, and enduring partnership. Never happened before. This is unprecedented. And I think that just symbolises the strength of the relationship between us. I'm delighted that the inspiring Nobel Peace, Nobel Prize winner.
True democracy is citizen-led. We demand a people's house!
This project has always been about fixing the foundations of our country.
It must be really incredible to be part of building, I mean, actually here, not just building.
Smash, 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 smash the gangs to smash the people smuggling gangs. Could you please join me when I say 5?
That man is not allowed in my pub.
4.
That's assault.
3.
That man is not allowed in my pub.
2.
Get out of my pub. Go on.
1.
Get out of my pub.
Yay! It worked.
Oh, it's hard to believe he's the Prime Minister, really, isn't it?
It certainly is difficult to believe it. He's not a man that I think is worthy of that office, but we've had quite a few incumbents, haven't we, who have not been worthy of the office.
Very true. I mean, if you were to sum up his Prime Ministership so far, what would you say?
Well, from his perspective, I think he probably thinks it's been an absolutely brilliant success.
He can't, surely, can he?
Well, he's destroyed the economy, he's enriched his unions, he's brought in taxation on the working class, he has increased our regulations manifold, he's going to make it more difficult to rent a property, he's going to make it more difficult to employ people, he's going to drive the DEI agenda to its nth degree. Under the excuse of having to improve our defences, he's going to put us into the European Defence Union, effectively giving up our defence to the EU. And if left to his own devices, he'll also take us back into the economic trading bloc that is the European Union. I think he would look at it and think that's fantastic. The rest of us, the vast majority of British citizens looking at what he's done, will realise he's destroyed the economy, made it impossible, frankly, to deal with the illegal migration, mass migration that's taking place, and is regulating us to hell, taxing us to hell. No one in their right mind would do what he's done in office. He's been a disaster. And, you know, our stock market, frankly, should have gone down much further as a result of the actions taken by Kier Starmer, rather than these tariffs imposed by President Trump.
Yeah, absolutely right. I said this yesterday to Julia. I said, you know, well, you can't ruin our economy, Donald Trump, because Rachel Reeves has already ruined it. So, you know, we can't go any further down. But great to see you, Bob. Ben, thank you very much indeed. Ben Habib, former Brexit Party MEP, chairman of Brexit Watch, of course. Let's get a voice note from Judith.
Hello, it's Judy from Altoffs, West Yorkshire. Instead of spending billions expanding Heathrow, why doesn't the government just spend millions reopening the new airport up north? Why is everything for down south and nothing for us up here? It'd make sense monetarily as well. It would be cheaper for them to take over the airport that's shut down. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Yes, well, I mean, it's a very good question. Why not build, you know, you don't need to expand Luton Airport, really, do you? Why don't you build a bigger airport up north where that people from Manchester, Leeds, Newcastle, even Glasgow and Edinburgh can use as an international airport? Because so many times you hear people coming down to London from Manchester because they have to fly through Heathrow to go to America or to go to Dubai or something like that. I know there are more direct flights now, but still, you know, it would make sense, wouldn't it? 22 minutes past 7. One here from G, who says, in 5 minutes, talking to Ben Habib, he blows Seeley out of the water. And then Steve says this, I thought Harry Potter's dad was talking about the tariffs, then realised it was Ben Habib. It's just because he's wearing a jumper. You know, it's Friday. It's dressed down Friday, isn't it? Or feet up Friday, some people call it, because nobody goes anywhere, nobody goes to work. Apart from us, right here at the home of common sense. 7:22.
This is the rebirth, the revivification of nations acting as nations and not being beholden to globalist projects, you know, one world of peace and harmony, which underneath is really an exercise in the accretion of power for those who aren't actually elected to public office. We want nations to be sovereign, and I think the deal that the UK received yesterday is a recognition of that.
The government has said today they are disappointed. They said there will be an economic impact. We're talking about thousands of jobs being lost.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 26 minutes past 7. Steve says this, you're spot on. All the world's financial markets and their traders is just playing a real-life game of Monopoly all the time. When they say trillions are lost, it's rubbish. Everything always moves up and down, and the dealers still make their millions. Well, that's my point. That's what I was saying earlier on today. David says, morning, Mike. Loving the show this morning. Just a note on the tariffs. It's just typical of the weak, woke world we live in that everyone spat out the dummy this morning over the new world order of the USA. The world leaders probably will now sign off sick with depression and anxiety. Great show. Loving the good, healthy debate and loving even more that you're feeling argumentative, said David in Blantyre. Well, I always do feel argumentative, to be fair. One on youth unemployment, says Massimo from Great Bowden. My 19-year-old has been looking for a job for over 6 months now. There are no jobs. This is the problem. Even the job centre told him they have nothing to offer him. And now we are in April with disastrous changes by Starmer and Reeves. There is no hope. It is soul-destroying. I mean, Massimo, I feel sorry for your son, and it may well be that it's a regional thing. It may well be that you have to go further afield. I know that's not always easy to do. But I've always believed, and I could be wrong about this, I'm very happy to be proved wrong, if you want to find a job, you can find one, right? You really can. And sometimes it seems if you really have to find one, you try just that little bit harder. And that's why I think in America, their system works a lot better than ours. You don't get unemployment paid for more than 6 months. And so if you lose your job, you need to get another one pretty damn quick. Otherwise, you got no job and you got no money. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We're going to talk to Dr. Paul Woodhouse in a moment. He's a dentist. We're going to talk about the problem in dentistry, which still hasn't been fixed. Let's get off gaff, though, because it's Gaff Prone Friday. And this is Jeremy Carl and Harry Cole.
Ryan sent me a message. Can you plug that you are here tomorrow?
Me or you?
What does that mean? What are you talking about? Oh, God! Oh, yes, I am here tomorrow. Sorry, see what happens?
I thought it was a show that they wanted me to do, which I didn't know about.
I thought it was another... Anyway, right, yes, I'm doing drive time tomorrow on a Thursday.
I'll do it if you want.
No, I'm doing it.
Are you? Sure. Thursday?
Yes, I'm doing... I'm working Thursday.
Don't you turn into a pumpkin if you
No, I don't turn into a pumpkin.
As usual, the gaffs have fed themselves because we've played the wrong one there, so that's another gaff, so we can double ourselves back and play the gaff that we just made as the real one. But never mind, we'll do that later. Let's talk to Dr. Paul Woodhouse. It's not a problem. Sometimes things go wrong when we do live radio and television. That's the life that we live. You know, we ride the what do they call it? I can't remember. I'm not going to say it. Anyway, Dr. Paul Woodhouse is here. Plans to fix NHS dentistry. Sorry about this. Are apparently a complete failure. Brilliant. Dr. Paul, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Why are the plans a complete failure? What's happened?
Basically, nobody's bothered to actually try and change the system. They're just tweaking around the edges, and every time somebody tweaks it, they don't think about the impact of what the tweaks are.
Right. So what you mean? You're telling me that the politicians have said they're going to do something and then they haven't done it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the contract we worked to
How unusual.
It was introduced in 2006. It was deemed not fit for purpose in 2008.
Right.
I'm not brilliant at maths, but that was a long time ago.
It really was, yeah. And a lot of teeth have fallen out between 2008 and 2025. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
But what were they meant to do that they didn't do?
So the idea was they were going to give dentists golden hellos of £20,000 to go and work in areas where there was no NHS dentistry.
Right.
They were paying dentists more units of activity for seeing new patients.
Right.
But the trouble is, they didn't change the contract, so if I've got a fixed pot of work I'm allowed to do on the NHS and I can use that pot up quicker, that's actually going to lead to fewer appointments available for NHS patients.
Right.
And if a contract is so rubbish that you have to pay somebody £20,000 to take it, that tells you there's something flawed in the system.
Yeah, right. Why don't they just make it possible to make an extra 20,000 by doing more work that way?
Because that would involve injecting more cash into the dental budget, and the dental budget has seen real terms funding cuts of over 30% in the last decade.
Right. But wouldn't adding 20 as a sort of bonus payment, doesn't that expand the money they're spending as well, or is that just sort of money from somewhere else?
Yeah, well, it's coming out of the original dental budget, so there's not actually been an increase in the dental budget at all.
Yeah. Well, what's Wes Streeting doing about it?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. They've introduced 700,000 emergency appointments, which spread out amongst every NHS dentist in the country. It's a drop in the ocean. Right. We're obviously being told that they're working at pace to introduce a new contract, but I personally haven't been given anything that's told me that it's going to be a panacea of healthcare for all.
Right.
The honest truth is, they only put enough money in, historically, not just the current government, they only put enough money in for half the population to have an NHS dentist in England. So straight away, 50% of the people listening to this can't have an NHS dentist.
Right. So of those 700,000 extra dental appointments that Wes Streeting says were made, how many of them came to you?
It's not a kind of, there you go, you do this. The idea is to design a contract variation which you have to apply for, and then you get paid based on following that contract variation. But having seen the terms of the contract variation, I'm not overly keen on doing it. It's quite onerous to provide these extra appointments. So what we're doing is simply using our current budget of NHS care and streaming it more to urgent cases than to regular cases, so we're pushing checkups back a little bit, so the healthier patients, we're seeing them less often, so we can free up more time to see those who need us.
Right, so the people who get the checkups less often are more likely to have less good teeth then after a while, aren't they?
No, if they're looking after themselves, you can push checkups back. The 6 monthly checkup is a historical artifact. It doesn't apply across the population. If you're really good at looking after yourself, you've got very few fillings, you don't need to be seen every 6 months. You could go to a year, 18 months. But if you're not so good at looking after yourself, your diet's not the best, your self-care's not the best, sometimes you need to be seen more often, maybe even every 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. Well, there's no apparent reason to believe that this is going to change anytime soon, then, by the sounds of what you're saying.
No, every government since 2008 has failed to grasp the nettle. I don't imagine anyone's going to do it anytime soon. My colleagues are struggling. They're currently losing money hand over fist caring for NHS patients. You know, a recent bit of research showed that if I make a dental in the NHS, I lose £42 of my own money. Yeah. So I'm paying to treat my patients on the NHS. That can't continue. Dental practices can't subsidise NHS care out of their own private income.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't sound good, does it? New dentists required, I think is the rallying cry. Dr. Paul Woodhouse, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. Got this from Don. It says, my son couldn't find a decent job in South Wales. He's ended up signing up for the RAF 2 years ago. He's having the time of his life, getting paid a decent salary with a roof over his head, learning a trade in avionics and seeing the world. There's no excuses anymore. The forces are the best work for young people. Too many lazy scrubs in this country. Well, that's always an option for people. Of course, I guess not such a great option if we end up going to war with anyone. But, I mean, you know, we have to take that chance. My postgraduate son took an entry-level job, says Anna in Surrey, worked 2 grades up, is employed walking dogs in his lunch break and works alternate weekends as a gardener. I would advise young people to get creative. Well, that's an interesting point as well. And Judith from West Yorkshire should be informed that before she has a pop at down south, we've got one of the highest property prices, and unlike in Yorkshire, you can't get a house for less than 300,000 quid. 2 Yorkshire girls in my office in Essex, and they're amazed at how bad it is down here, says Alex. Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose you take the rough with the smooth. I mean, some people would say you probably get paid more to work down this part of the world as well. One from Kev, who says in Stafford, great to hear about the planned expansion of Luton Airport and its impact on the growth of the Northern Powerhouse. Oh, wait a minute, it's only north of Watford. Yeah, not very far north of Watford either. At last, I've just heard Bob say the Equalities Act needs to go, says Andrew. It started out with the best of intentions, but turned into some groups being more equal than others, such that now we've reached a stage where every group is vying for superiority, apart from white, working-class, heterosexual males. Exactly right. What can you do? Coming up, we've got lots more to do. We've got many more people to talk to. We're going to get Julian Jessup up to talk about the economy. Rupert Bell is going to be here as well to talk about Harry and his latest problem with the Charities Commission. It's 7:34.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, and this, of course, is the home of common sense at 7:36. Unlike the spineless Tories, says Tony, who didn't back Liz Truss, America will back President Trump. Markets think they dictate the financial outlook, but they do not. And one from David, he says, morning, Mike, tariffs. Ben mentioned that businesses will be looking to the UK to mitigate the tariffs being imposed by the USA on Europe. Why wouldn't they simply set up in the USA? The UK is a basket case. Well, certainly there will be some people doing that if they're big enough, if they're international enough, they're global enough, they can do that. They can't all pick up sticks and move to America, but an awful lot of people would, I think, if they could right now. Let's talk to Julian Jessup, independent economist. He's always a man that has plenty of common sense to give us. We'll see what he makes of what's going on in the markets at the moment and what's happening with our economy. Julian, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I've been saying this morning, really, that, you know, it's a pity that people think the markets are dictating how our economic sort of recovery and our economic future is, because my view of the markets is that, you know, people make money when the markets go down, and they make money when the markets go up. They don't make money when they're flat. And, you know, we shouldn't be all filled with doom and gloom just because the markets have dropped a bit.
Well, it depends why the markets are moving. And I think in the case of what we've seen over the last few days, investors are very worried about the impact of the new tariffs, not just on the global economy, but actually on the US economy. There are some very sharp falls in US equity markets overnight. And I think actually the markets are probably onto something. I think, you know, Trump's tariff policies are economically illiterate. And even if you like them, there's so much uncertainty about what he's going to do next that people are not sure where to put their money or build their factories. So I think the markets, in this case at least, are onto something, and we should be worried about the economic outlook too.
Isn't a lot of it like with Donald Trump in many areas of his policies, whether it's foreign or otherwise or economic? It's a sort of wait and see as well, isn't it?
Well, that's part of the problem. A lot of Trump, well, what Trump is doing is just sort of throwing the pieces up into the air and seeing where they land. And it's possible in some scenarios that the US economy might end up stronger as a result, and that might be a model we might want to copy. But there are also plenty of scenarios where it all goes horribly wrong. And in the meantime, of course, investors and businesses simply don't know what to do. So by and large, if they're holding financial assets, they sell them. Or if they're looking to make investment decisions or hiring assets, decisions off. So the uncertainty alone is damaging, regardless of what you think about the underlying policies.
Yeah, but there's a lot of that uncertainty built into the markets nowadays, is there not, particularly in Britain, with the way that the economy is being run by this particular government?
Yes, I think there's certainly a lack of what economists call animal spirits, and I think one of the problems that this government has created and exacerbated is looking too much at what the sort of economic models tell you, and not enough going out talking to real businesses and to households. As others have pointed out, there's a lack of any substantial economic or business experience in the cabinet, and they genuinely seem to have been surprised that, you know, when you raise taxes on employers and increase labour costs, businesses don't like it. You know, they cut hiring, they cut investment, they raise prices.
How could they not know that?
Well, yes, to you and me and all of your viewers and listeners, I'm sure it's blindingly obvious that was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, unlike Rachel Reeves and yourself, I'm not an economist, but I mean, I could have told them that.
Yeah, and they assumed it would be offset by other things. So they assumed that, you know, people would be happy to pay these higher taxes because some of the money at least will be going into increased public spending on public services and investments and so on. That's all well and good, but, you know, that spending will only provide any benefits over the longer term, and only then if it's spent wisely. In the meantime, all people can see is their bills going up, you know, their tax bills going up, increasing job insecurity and all the other things that are going on.
Right, exactly. And Kier Starmer doesn't seem very sure how to react to this tariff business either, does he?
Well, we've got another big problem here, which is that I'm not sure who's advising Kier Starmer on economic policy. It's clearly not an area that he's comfortable with. If you look at his performances in parliamentary questions, he keeps making mistakes, muddling inflation and interest rates, for example, a number of times recently. So he doesn't understand economics, and I don't think he's got a strong team of economic advisors around him to push back against Rachel Reeves. And of course, Rachel Reeves herself, I mean, she is an economist, despite what some people say. I just don't think she's a very good one.
Yeah.
So you have a fundamental problem there that the government doesn't really understand economics or business, and that's reflected in their policy choices.
And that is a massive problem, isn't it? I mean, when you've got an organisation running the country who don't really know effectively, you're saying they don't really know what they're doing. I mean, what are the Treasury about then? What's the point of having all these civil servants in the Treasury if they can't advise the government?
Well, a lot of economists, myself included, are quite critical of what's sometimes called sort of treasury brain. It's a sort of bean counting mentality. But I partly blame the politicians for that as well. After all, Rachel Reeves has doubled down on the fiscal rules. And consequently, she's the one that set the agenda that the treasury has to follow. That said, there are a few positive things going on, as I've mentioned before, things like planning reform, and there are some areas of deregulation in the economy that the Treasury is helping to drive. So I wouldn't entirely blame my former colleagues at the Treasury either.
Yeah, but I mean, considering the numbers of people involved in stewarding supposedly our economy, it's very haphazard, and it seems very, very unpredictable.
Well, there's a fundamental, deeper problem here. Is can we really expect politicians in Westminster or officials in Whitehall to run the economy? I simply don't think we should expect that. I think as far as possible, it should be left to the markets to sort out. The individual decisions of businesses and consumers will produce much better economic outcomes than some committee in Whitehall deciding that.
But then you lay yourself open, I suppose, to the vagaries of the markets and the mood of the investors and the mood of the traders and all of that, and which could also be in its own way quite unstable.
Well, no system is perfect, but give me the sort of realities of capitalism, if you like. And there's these sort of hypothetical worlds where politicians are all seeing and all wise, and the government always gets it right. I think experience, both in this country and elsewhere, has shown that markets, generally speaking, get it right. It's the politicians that get things wrong, and the best thing the government can often do is get out of the way.
Yeah, well, I guess very few politicians would agree with that, and that's why they're politicians. But there we are. Good to talk to you, Julian. Thanks very much indeed, Julian Jessup there. Let's get a voice note from Al on dentistry.
Obsessed about looking after my teeth. So when I didn't go to the dentist for 9 years, because I didn't think I needed to, and then went when I was pregnant because it's free and I could get a dentist, didn't need anything doing. He said, "You're doing a fantastic job." So I'm now in my mid-50s. I haven't had any extra fillings in the last 40 odd years. The only fillings I had were given to me, and I suspect when I didn't need them, because in the 70s you used to take your child to the dentist, and despite us never having sweets and never having bad teeth, we always needed loads of fillings. So I think it was a money-making plan, really. So yeah, you don't need, if you can look after your teeth, you don't need a dentist every 6 months. You could probably get away with one every year, every 18 months or every 2 years, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, listen, Elle, you're a very fortunate woman. I mean, I know there are some people who have got great teeth and they've hardly ever had a filling in their lives. I know people who hardly ever have to go to the dentist either. But then some people, like me, for example, I mean, I had bad teeth from the beginning of time because my parents were from Scotland. And I think that's part of being from Scotland, is you just don't have very good teeth. It's just the way it goes. Graham says this: when I left school many moons ago, I was told by my parents, if you're not in full-time education, get a job and start paying your way. Funny, the same ethic I played to my 3 kids now in their 30s, working extremely hard and having a nice life. There's nothing wrong with the old-fashioned values. I think that's right. I think there's no question. I bet you if you were to look at some of the people who are between the ages of 16 and 24 and have never had a job, it might well be that that's the situation that they find themselves in because their parents perhaps never had a job. And I think there's a lot of that goes on. Generational joblessness. Susan says this: on a job search front, I'm very proud of my daughter. The job centre was useless. Every job suggestion she had already applied for and interviewed for. She volunteered months ago in a charity shop. With that experience, she now has a full-time job with a pension and holidays. We are very proud parents. That's Sue in Brigg. Thanks for that, Sue. Let's talk to Chris, who's in Epsom, wants to talk about tariffs. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Bob. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. What can I do for you?
I was thinking about Bob Seeley. No, I like the man normally, but this morning I can't.
Yeah, he was off on one this morning, wasn't he?
Oh, mate, he was sounding like a globalist. The thing is, right, take your JCB, for instance.
Yeah.
JCB were given a tax incentive to build in Arizona.
Yeah.
They knew the tariff thing was coming along, and they've announced they're doubling, not just increasing the size, they're doubling the size of the factory.
Yeah.
And that can be nothing but good for JCB.
And it's good for JCB. It's also good for Britain because it's a British company, and that money will filter back into the UK as well.
Yes, exactly. The thing is, right, we've been offshoring everything for years.
Yeah.
All right? And, I mean, Miliband is the worst. We're buying slave-produced solar panels,
yes,
right, which will degrade in 10 years. And then there's a terrible way of getting rid of them. They're a real nuisance to get rid of. in an ecologically sound way.
Yeah.
Wind turbines are the same. They have a maximum 20 years of life. They use so much diesel to power them up. Then we pay when they're not working. This is a complete nonsense. Trump's tariffs, all right, will do nothing but good for America in the long run, because what I can see is they've already announced $1 billion of investment in the automotive industries coming back into the States. Now, if his tariffs work, which I believe they will, because let's face it, Europe puts 39% on everything American. Him putting 20% on seems very fair to me. If his tariffs work, Vance will be the next president, and that will maintain the powerhouse that was America. Because everybody, let's be fair, not just security issues for Europe, but absolutely living off the back of America, offshoring and buying in.
Yeah,
and it's put America in a bad position. I don't know how many presidents you have to go. I think you have to go back to Reagan, who was a decent president. And that's when we had a decent prime minister as well.
And that's when America was booming back in the 1980s. I lived there when Reagan was in charge, and it was absolutely fantastic. America was, you used to call it the gleaming sepulchre on the hill, and that's what it was like. You know, I went there from, what was the early days of Thatcher's Britain, still recovering from the 70s, and I went there in the early 80s, and America was absolutely booming. You could do anything, you could make as much money as you liked. People were absolutely, happy as Larry. Loved Reagan, he was a great president, and you're right, I don't think there's been a decent one since.
I'll tell you something. I lived in New York in 97 and 98.
Okay.
When Giuliani was there.
Yeah.
If you were in the States, you remember that New York was the murder capital of America.
It was.
And Giuliani, with his no broken windows, zero tolerance, turned that city around.
Yeah, I remember.
And I lived there under him, and it was brilliant.
Yeah. Absolutely right. And New York now is an absolute mess, complete mess, thanks to the Democrats. Chris, thank you very much indeed. Good call. Chris in Epsom there. Morning, Mike, says Alex in Devon. So you're complaining that we should get back to the office, where I might add we can't listen to or watch talk if we leave the house at 7. Well, listen, you can listen to talk all the time, wherever you are. You can just put your headphones in and away you go. He says, but you're OK with JHB, Julie Hartley-Brewer and Jezza putting in a 4-day week. At least I put in a 5-day week and work the hours I'd usually travel. Keep up the good work. Are you saying you don't go anywhere at all, Alex? I just feel sorry for people that don't go into an office. I think it's, it's an awful existence to have. You might think it's better for you, but it's really not. And it's certainly not good for London. It's certainly not good for cities where, you need people to be moving around. You need people to be spending money. You need an economy that's booming, not people making sandwiches and sitting down in their pyjamas. I'm sorry. And as for Julie Hartley-Brewer and Jezza, they can do what they like. They are entirely ordinary individuals just like you. And you can do what you like as well, by the way. It's just my opinion. Tim in Suffolk says, I totally agree with the other guy. I joined the RAF at 17, 35 years ago. As a result, I've been earning over £55,000 a year, the best thing I ever did, and you also gain a second family, says Tim. Excellent work. Keep up those messages, of course. You can tweet us at talkTV. You can send us a message to talk at 87222, start your message with the word talk. And, of course, you can send us a voice note on 0344 499 1000. That's on WhatsApp. Record it, send it in, and we'll play it out. This is Talk.
there is a brigade of people on the centre-right of politics who argue for free trade come hell or high water. But I think they are missing the point. Over the last 30, 40 years, we've had what I would call unbridled global free trade. And that has been to the detriment, significantly, of the United Kingdom and the United States of America, where we've got very high standards, very high regulations, high taxation. Other countries exporting to us don't have those same high standards.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:52. This, of course, is the home of common sense. I'm Mike Graham. Morning Glory all the way through with you until 10 o'clock. 4 glorious hours every single weekday morning from 6 until 10. Alex Phillips coming in at 10 o'clock to bring you up to date with what's going on around the world, of course. We've got big stories to talk about. No bigger than Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, has hit out this morning blatant lies about Sentebale, the African charity at the centre of a race row, which he was, of course, the patron of until relatively recently when he resigned. The Charities Commission is now going to open a statutory inquiry into Sentebale, thanks to the complaints made by Sophie Chandorka, who, of course, has said that the Duke of Sussex is guilty of bullying her and using inappropriate and unpleasant language. Unbelievable stuff. Rupert Bell is here, Talk's royal correspondent. Rupert, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
This story has got some legs, hasn't it? Still going after about 5 days.
Yeah, and it's a sort of element of he said, she said, who said what. And so that's why the Charity Commission are now going to be investigating, brought about by Sophie Chandorka, who said since the trustees resigned, to look at the governance. And one of the questions that the Prince Harry's team and the group of trustees has said, all this money that's been spent on consultants. On the other hand, Sophie Chandorka has said the Prince Harry creates problems for the charity because they find it hard to get people to contribute to Sentebale. So it's a really murky, messy sort of situation. And it really is sad because ultimately the people who are suffering are the people that Sentebale is designed to help in Africa. Yeah. Because at the moment, I mean, if you're looking at a big donor, a charitable donor, you'd probably be questioning whether you should be giving money because there's all the infighting that has been going on. Well, at the moment, the fighting is quite clearly out there. It's a verbal war of words, it fears. But the Charity Commission, hopefully, will sort of give the correct picture of exactly what is going on. And Sophie Chandorka has said she's got nothing to hide. Right, exactly. And Harry has issued a statement, which is unusual because we had said until yesterday he's not really said much about this whole situation. He says, I've had a clear goal to support the children and young people in Southern Africa in memory of our mothers. What has transpired over the last week has been heartbreaking to witness, especially when such blatant lies hurt those who have invested decades in this shared goal. Well, he may say that, but I mean, he's now resigned as the head of the charity, so he's obviously not got that goal anymore. Well, no, but he would like to get it back, and ultimately he wanted to say that Sophie Chandorka should resign, and then he could, the trustees could appoint someone new. But one of the reasons that the problems for Harry is that there are sort of suggestions that he was putting pressure on Sophie Chandorka to put out positive statements about him and Meghan following that polo match last April, where, of course, there was all the hoo-ha around the presentation of the trophy, and that seemed to be a reason why their relationship broke down. So it's just a very unseemly mess. But once again, Harry in the spotlight for probably all the wrong reasons. Now, it might in the end prove that he has a case, but at the moment, if you look at the facts, once again, Harry has embroiled himself something in blatant lies. Let's be honest, so recollections may vary, is one of the statements that was put very firmly to Harry and Meghan back in the day over various things that they had said. So at the moment, you have to take it all sort of with a sort of guarded view of it, because it's a mess. And
it is.
And Harry, again, has got himself in a position where he's in the spotlight for the wrong reasons. It is interesting, though, that his wife hasn't actually leapt to his defence here, where he's always leaping to her defence. No, she said nothing. She's too busy worrying about what to do with raspberry jam pots when they've been used. So,
well, I was saying yesterday, obviously now that if you want to buy some of that raspberry jam, which I understand you can't because she only made about 10 pots of it and it's all sold out, you have to add a 10% tariff onto it now because it'll be coming from the US of A into Britain, right? So it now costs £12.10 now, not £11.
Well, and the honey's even more expensive.
Yeah, 22 quid for that.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we're not sure of the provenance of the honey, but it must be the best honey that's available in America, I would have thought.
Well, indeed. I've never been a fan of American honey, to be honest. It's not one of the things they do well. But, I mean, this is the other thing. You know, she's quoted from emails that Harry has sent her, this woman, Sophie Chandorka. So presumably she'll make all of those available to the Charities Commission, which might mean that they all get published.
Well, yes, and she's a feisty lawyer, clearly, and she would have made sure that she'd got all her position well sorted out, because she suddenly found herself in the storm because they resigned and she'd hardly had time to notice it, but I think, and that's why she did that interview at the weekend, where she definitely was trying to get on the front foot. But it's up to the Charity Commission now to see if they can sort this unseemly mess out.
Yeah, absolutely right. Now, you're up in Aintree right now because, of course, it's the beginning of the Grand National Festival. You're there for Talk Sport. I don't suppose you've got any tips for the National, have you?
Well, it's tomorrow, 4 o'clock, live on TalkSport it shall be. It's Ladies' Day today, which is one of the great racing days of the occasion. And Merseyside, every beauty salon as we speak is absolutely chock-a-block with everyone getting ready for what is one of the great fun days. Weather's great, but tomorrow, really, 34 runners. Stumptown's likely to be the favourite. I've got a sneaking regard for Can Do Kid and Vanillier. Both back those each way, so that's my thoughts on
Can Do Kid and Vanillier.
Yeah.
Okay, I should take your word for that, Rupert. Thank you very much. There'll be a large drink in it for you if anything works out. Thank you. Rupert Bell there reporting into us from Aintree. Have we got time for a voice note or not? Yeah, go on.
Morning, Mike. Ben from Lincoln. I thought the NHS were short of 200,000 people for jobs. Why don't people that can't find a job go and do a job with the NHS until they find something that they really want to do? Great show. Take care, mate.
Very good point. This is the thing, you know, people wait for the perfect job. Well, don't wait for the perfect job. Get any job which gets you into the market. You'll find it's a lot easier to find a new job once you've actually got a job as opposed to trying to find a new job when you haven't got a job. 0344 499 1000. Baroness Claire Fox coming up in the next part of the show after the news. See you soon.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10p, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12.60. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham. The day is upon us, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a good one. There's a lot of hay fever warnings going on as well, actually. So if you do suffer from that, you might want to be careful. You might want to take a pill or two. I never used to have hay fever. I suddenly got it again. It started last year, bizarrely. I used to have it when I was a kid. I was up till about the age of 12, and then it just kind of stopped. And I didn't have it anymore. And suddenly last year, for the first time, I started to get sort of, pollen bothered. And now I take pills for it. I don't know about you, whether there's something in the air, whether it's changed. Any coming up in this hour, Baroness Claire Fox is going to be talking to us. We'll talk to her about the 5-year anniversary of Kier Starmer as Labour leader. We've got a little tribute that we'll play for him. Also, we'll talk a bit about the tariffs. We'll talk a bit about the young people, 500,000 of them who have never worked. It's become a bit of a subject. There's lots of you getting in touch to tell me about your sons and daughters who have found ways of getting jobs, despite the fact that a lot of people say there's not many of them out there. Well, surely the question is, go and get a job, any job, and just start working. And if you can, you'll get into the habit of it. And it's far better than doing nothing. As simple as that. 0344 499 1000. Also, we'll talk some more about Prince Harry. We'll talk some more about the expansion of Luton Airport. Apparently this net zero obsessed government doesn't mind expanding airports. Go figure. They also want to build a giant solar farm on an ancient roadway from 600 BC. They want to put some slave-made solar panels on an area which is supposedly going to power 30,000 homes. Can you imagine how big that's going to be? Oh, by the way, good news, the hawk has been caught. You remember the hawk the other day? People said we should call it Rachel because it keeps attacking ordinary working Britons. The hawk has now been caught by a cunning local person who opened a cage and put some meat in it, and the hawk flew in, shut the cage. Bob's your uncle. Caught the hawk. They're no more attacking men. It only used to attack men for some reason. 0344 499 1000. Also, we're going to talk about the Co-op. They've lost £80 million in the last year because of shoplifting. Can you believe that? Absolutely extraordinary. And also, Sadiq Khan has been accused by the Israelis of parroting Hamas propaganda. That's the Mayor of London, ladies and gentlemen, has been accused of parroting propaganda from a terrorist organisation called Hamas. Unbelievable stuff. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Also, it's the death of the round in the pub because people literally can't afford it. It's that expensive. 5 minutes past 8. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Got a great one here from Becky in Devon. She says, "Hi Mike, I'm freelance. I work at home and live in a small seaside town in Devon. I make sure that twice a week I go to town and use a local sandwich shop or cafe to grab lunch. In our town, we've learned that in recent months, if we don't use it, we lose it. Careers are changing. More of us are working in social media, advertising, marketing, etc. as freelancers from home, especially those under 40 and usually females. The government needs to encourage these small freelancers like me." I've always agreed with that, Becky. The government would actually do a big favour to an awful lot of people who want to work but can't seem to find a job because they need to work on their own or they need to work as freelancers, is they could make the tax breaks better, they could make the tax system simpler, and they could actually make it possible for you to keep more of the money that you make. Lewis says a perfect job for the unemployed would be tidy up Britain. That's not a bad shout, actually. If you look at the pictures in the Sun today from Birmingham, they've compared them to what it used to look like in parts of Britain in 1979, when there was garbage all over the place, rubbish all over the streets because there was a bin strike. In fact, in 1979, there was pretty much a strike about everything, you know, because that was when everything was falling apart under Labour, funnily enough. 6 minutes past 8. Let's talk to Baroness Claire Fox, independent peer and director, of course, of the Academy of Ideas. Claire, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
You'll remember the 70s. I don't wish to age you, but, I mean, it's beginning to look a bit like that up in Birmingham, isn't it?
Yeah, different reasons, but absolutely horrible what's happening in Birmingham.
Yeah, I mean...
And I think it's really funny this morning because a government minister, the local government minister, said, this strike must end. It's like, what? You make it... Is that it?
Yes.
Is that your declaration?
Right.
I mean, it's like something you have to do something. You can't just, like, announce it. Everybody knows it should end.
Right. And probably even both sides of it want it to end, but they can't find any agreement about how to end it.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a genuine emergency, and at this point, I do think the government should step in, not just make an announcement. And at the very least, they should, as has just been suggested, they should organise an emergency for Birmingham, recruit all of those not in education or training people, give them some dosh for a while, and say, go and clean up Birmingham.
Yeah. I think that's a very good idea, because let's talk about that story, because I mean a lot of people are losing their well, I can't say the word, can I, but they're losing whatever it is they've got over the tariff story, and I'm less concerned about the tariff story than I am about our own economy and how it's being stewarded by this government, you know, because we'll ride the wave of the tariffs. I'm sure it'll all work out in the end, and whether or not, you know, the stock market recovers, you know, the guys that work at the stock market will be still making a fortune and buying a new Ferrari in the new year, you know, so I'm less worried about that than I am about this wasted generation. Story in the front of the Times. We've been talking about it, a lot of people talking about it on the show this morning, how hard it is to get a job, how easy it should be. People should just get out there and work. But 500,000 people in this country, young people who have never actually had a job.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got to remember what the causes of this are. We can't get away with not saying lockdown. I mean, this is a generation that went through lockdown that were demobilised. And we broke a social contract with that lockdown, because we basically said work wasn't that important.
Yeah.
It's, you know, health is more important, right? That was the message.
Yes, it was.
That's what we told them. And so consequently, you've got this generation of young people who think, I don't feel so well, I'm not going to go to work. You know, I don't feel well enough to go to work. Yeah. And they got out of that habit, was broken. And I think that's a very big factor. The other problem is that we have medicalised far too many conditions. So this generation has been brought up being told that any number of things are mental ill health. You know, that if they're feeling miserable, they're feeling fed up, that they are actually ill. There's huge queues for diagnosis for mental health illness and for things like ADHD. They feel as that, in other words, I want us to recognise it's not just lazy young people, it's sort of our generation's fault for having introduced all this nonsense to them in the first place. They just haven't got the resilience. So we've got to really see this as I think this is a genuine national crisis. But it was interesting that you just had somebody on saying that they're freelancers, right? Because there's a lot of young people who are thinking that they can have this kind of, well, I'll do a bit of work here, a bit of work there. And there's this terrible juggernaut coming up the motorway, which is the Employment Rights Bill. And the Employment Rights Bill is, through its apparent attachment to workers' rights, is going to effectively say that you can't choose anything like 0 hours, and it's going to affect freelancers.
Yeah.
They're suddenly going to be not allowed to be freelancers. So rather than tackling the real problem, they're avoiding the problem and creating new problems.
Well, because you're going to end up, presumably, if you want to be a freelancer, you're going to have some kind of contract, which you might not want to have.
Exactly. So there's going to be real problems. And in fact, it's quite funny, because we just started to discuss it in the House of Lords, and even people who wouldn't normally be opposing the government, like some of the crossbench sort of great and good, but they work in the arts sector, they're saying, oh my God, you're going to attack freelancers. You've got to do something about this.
Right.
This is going to have a detrimental effect, because practically everyone who works in the arts is a freelancer of one sort or another.
Right.
So there's real problems down the road. That's all I'm saying.
Yes. No, I think that's a very good point worth making, because not many people are talking about this, and I think it's a far more, you know, I know I'm part of the media, but I often think the media chase the wrong dog. You know, they're chasing around after this tariff story, you know, like the stock markets are falling, what an absolute calamity. Well, yeah, but that's what people in the stock markets do. You know, they buy and sell stock. Sometimes it goes down, sometimes it goes up. You know, the way the newspapers look this morning, you'd think there was some kind of, you know, economic collapse on the way. And I mean, the government have already collapsed our economy, so there's not much further it could go, really.
Well, you see, one of the problems with the tariff story, look, it is a big story. I'm not convinced that Trump's doing the right thing. However, it, to a certain extent, is not something we can act very much on.
No.
You know what I mean? We can just sit here. I mean,
no, we can just watch and wait and see what happens.
Exactly. But as you rightly pointed out, and I've said this myself on other bits of the media, my concern is that the Trump story doesn't become the excuse that Starmer has for problems with the British economy.
Right.
Because actually, until the tariff story, there was already absolute signs of meltdown in relation to decisions that this government has made. And I think the national insurance contribution story still should be headline news.
Yeah.
I mean, it's had a devastating impact on all the sectors, all the small businesses, even on the farmers who are already under the cosh with everything else.
Yeah.
Anyone that employs anyone is now having to spend a fortune on national insurance contribution increases.
Yes.
Let alone the minimum wage stuff and all the rest of it. So we're in a situation where when you say there's all these people who aren't working, the truth is that the workplace is people who would be employing people are now stopping employing people. And as I say, this employment rights bill is going to also put so much onerous responsibility and regulatory garbage and red tape onto small businesses. That'll be even less employment. So I think that I actually know young people who are trying to get jobs, to be fair, because this idea that they're all just sitting there not doing anything is only half the story. When somebody said there's all these jobs in the health service that they should be able to get, it's actually bureaucratic madness to even find the jobs in the health service. So what they should do is actually literally have a kind of new campaign where they go out and they say, these are the 200,000 jobs or whatever it is.
Right.
You know, 1 million jobs that need filling. And if you want one of them, you're to come and turn up at 10 o'clock in the morning and we'll help you get it.
I mean, if
because
it's a job,
they're not doing anything practical to help those young people get the jobs that we know are vacant, right?
But that's the thing, you know, if there are these jobs and the NHS does need saving, and I think we can all agree that it does, because it's not got very many high marks even from the people of this country now. They've completely lost faith in it. You know, the satisfaction survey came out the other day. People just don't trust the NHS anymore. They don't believe that they'll get an appointment with a doctor. They know that they're going to be stuck on a big long waiting list. You know, it's not working. You'd think that would be a crisis management manoeuvre. You'd think for sure, if we need 200,000 more people, let's get them in, you know,
exactly.
and offer some incentive to make people want to go and work there. You know, it makes no sense. Again, I mean, we were talking to a dentist earlier who was saying that, you know, the new dental plan that was introduced by the last government and now by this government isn't working. Nothing's actually changed. Nobody's done anything. They haven't put any more money in. They've told the dentists that they're going to have a different contract, but it hasn't come through. You know, it's all window dressing, isn't it?
I think, you know, you're doing the review of Kier Starmer, you know, 5 years in. Window dressing is a very good way of explaining it, because there's lots of declarations and nothing actually changes.
Right.
And I mean, I know that you could say that of all governments, but I really do feel that the thing that's most irritating about this government is the number of times that they come out and say, this is now going to be the way we solve this problem. And there's been some good statements, you know. Wes Streeting has said some interesting things about the NHS. You know, he's indicated he's prepared to do major reform. But then you have to hold your breath, because nothing actually has actively changed on the ground. And one of the problems is that the institutions are so sclerotic and so full of all the nonsense that are holding them back, that the government's announcements are not the same as government action. And they tick a box and say, oh, we've done that, we've done that, we've done that. We don't need to think about it anymore. So they're far removed from the lives of ordinary people. You know, when they keep saying things like, I mean, I heard some interviews this morning, and it's like, well, we're doing everything for working people. We're, you know, they're better off than they were before.
They keep saying it.
Have you ever talked to anyone at all in your life? You are kidding me.
I know.
People are tearing their hair out.
Right. And they keep, I mean, he issues all these sort of platitudes on video these days with sort of rather curious, you know, background music that they put underneath it. You know, talking about how he's fixing this, he's fixing that. And he said the other day that, you know, the migrants, you know, we're getting to grips with the illegal migrants. You're not getting to grips, and there's more of them coming than ever. And there's going to be more of them coming today. It's another nice day today. There's going to be thousands more of them coming between now and the end of the summer. You know, and he goes on about, oh, we've arrested one guy in Amsterdam for having some boat parts. You know, we're absolutely cracking down on the gangs. It's like, well, you're clearly not cracking down on the gangs. And we've got another story today. We call it Migrant of the Day now. This is a guy, a rapist, who can't be sent back to Jamaica because of concerns over his safety, because apparently his mother gave evidence in a trial for some gangsters in the Caribbean, and he was convicted for murder, this guy. So he's now thought to be in danger if he gets sent back, because he should be deported because he's a sex offender, a serious sex offender, but he doesn't get to go because we have to look after him here.
Well, and what's more, I mean, those stories are now rightly getting the attention they deserve, which is totally bizarre decisions about the lack of deportations of criminals who, in any other period, you would just get into a plane and send them back.
Yeah.
I think that we have got a problem of judicial activism. There's no doubt about it.
No question.
The Sentencing Council has just come out, by the way. The Sentencing Council that's introduced the two-tier sentences and has been in the newspapers have also, it's now been revealed, are going to have a lesser, basically they've watered down the immigration deportation sentences. So if you get done as a gang leader, you could actually not get sent to prison or get a lesser sentence. That's what their guidance says. And this is a body that was set up by a government, and the government are not dealing with it. So every time they make an announcement, you know that some other bit of government is doing something completely contradictory. And, the story that's most annoyed me of all stories of the week is the fuss that's been made around this series, this Netflix series, Adolescence.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Which, can I just point out that I loved it. I mean, I loved it when I watched it. It's a great series, great drama, well acted, great, right? But that's it. It's a piece of artwork, right? I mean, good. I recommend lots of things on Netflix. I don't want the government to organise its policy around what.
Well, it's like saying, let's make Harry Potter part of the English curriculum. Not just because it's a great book, but because that's what people should be learning about. And you go, well, not really. You encourage people to read, but you don't make it policy.
But they called a summit.
Yeah.
I mean, they called a summit, and then we discover that this great drama, which, by the way, I loved. But now I've got to the point where every time I hear the words, I feel like.
Well, I've deliberately boycotted. I'm not watching it because I'm sort of allergic to anything that people do in groups. And as soon as everybody starts liking something, I immediately hate it.
I know. It's a shame because it is good. But anyway, the thing that's really irritating about this summit is they then bring all this charity together. We then discover there's a charity called Tender, who have actually had government money to advise on, crisis of young men and masculinity, the usual, and radicalisation and all that.
Yeah.
And that they were advising on the drama. They then get called to the summit with the NSPCC and other children's charities. And there's an emergency summit and they're going to roll it out around the schools. It's completely irresponsible because when and if you do watch it, Mike, you'll think, actually, should we be showing this in schools?
Yeah.
It's not actually very appropriate.
Well, that's right.
I mean, it's got all sorts of things in it, like a psychotherapist asking the young boy all about his sexual preferences and all the rest of it. It's like, oh my God, if anything's going to radicalise him, it's this. And anyway, it was written for adults to understand something about young people. So why would you be showing it to young people? The whole thing is topsy-turvy.
I know,
but
also, as somebody pointed out to me, Kier Starmer is very happy to have a summit about, a fictional drama, but he's not actually willing to have a summit about the real problem, which is affecting young people in this country, which is all sorts of different things. I mean, I've got this from Paul in Fife, right? He says, I think Netflix should come up with a series which portrays groups of young black men who go around stabbing and hacking each other to death. This could be shown around schools to discourage all young men not to go about stabbing each other. Just an idea, but unlikely to happen. I mean, it would be racist to stereotype people, wouldn't it?
But it's also the case that, my sort of counter is they should be showing that docudrama Three Girls about the rape gangs, right, which is stunning. They should show that in schools, but I don't want them to show anything in schools. But your point about the summit's well made, because we've just been talking about the real crisis in young people is that they're not going to work. So if you're going to have a summit and you're going to get everyone together and you're going to say we're going to do emergency action, then actually have a summit about that. And then they could act some of our very commonsensical ways of dealing with this as a mass recruitment drive, as we said, for new jobs. They could actually work out something practical. But instead, the headlines have been absolutely consumed with this, we're going to save young people by showing a made-up fictional drama in schools completely inappropriately. And I think that sums up what I think is wrong with the government. The way that they prioritise what matters. It's like when they dealt with after Southport, and their big announcement is, that we're going to ban the sale of knives on Amazon.
Right.
I mean, you want to tear your hair out. You think, what are you talking about? What on earth makes you think that is the solution? And at every single point, their decision about what is the most important reaction to some of the big stories is the least effective intervention. but they then say we are acting, we're doing something.
Yeah, we're doing
but
something.
It's always the wrong thing.
It's always the wrong thing. I mean, we're better off piping in morning glory into the schools of this country, and they'd all have a bit more common sense, for heaven's sake. Have a look at this, right? This is Starmer. This is something he tweeted this week about national renewal.
This weekend is 9 months since the general election, since the entire nation voted overwhelmingly for change. Since I stood on the steps of Downing Street and promised that this Labour government would be on the side of working people. With our plan for change, we are turning things around and getting our country back on track.
Well, first of all, they're not turning things around and getting the country back on track. They're taking it further down into the dirt, actually. And also, they did not win by a massive landslide. They had one of the lowest victories and one of the lowest margins of victory, actually, of all time. They got a lot of seats, but they only got about 20% of the vote, didn't they?
They've shown absolutely no humility at all about the fact that that massive majority is actually pretty thin.
Yeah.
They don't seem to understand the contempt and hatred that people feel, not just for them, but for the mainstream parties. I mean, this is not fine to Labour. They actually gained by the absolute disillusion that people have with the Conservative Party, who were terrible when they were in government, particularly in the latter years. And so his self-flattery about that, how popular he is actually shielding him from the reality of the way people feel about what government's doing. And it's on a range of things. I mean, I do think that things like the two-tier sentencing, I think the issues around, you know, people haven't forgotten the fact that there are people in prison as we speak for Facebook posts in relation to the Southport riots, the way that they demonised anybody who showed any sympathy at all with why those riots might have happened. We know that there's a sort of nasty undercurrent of people feeling that they are being, you know, treated with contempt because they're members of the white working class. We know that in a way they've stirred up some of that kind of racial disharmony through continually going on down the road of identity politics. They just haven't got a clue. I mean, as we speak, I mean, they'd say they're on the side of the workers, right? As we speak, there are a group of 8 or 9 nurses called Darlington nurses who are in court in the tribunal in the northeast against their NHS trust because they simply want, or they're from Darlington, they simply want to get changed in a woman's changing room because they're nurses, right? You have to get changed all the time. They don't want to have a men in there. And because somebody identifies as a man, it's turned into this massive debacle. This is an NHS trust. These are workers. They've had to set up their own union, the Darlington Nurses Union, right? And so much for Starmer saying he's on the side of working people. Actually, ordinary nurses in ordinary hospitals are having to put up with all this absolute ideological claptrap in relation to, for example, gender ideology. Every institution is still drowning in equality, diversity and inclusion policies that threaten people's livelihoods if you say the wrong thing at work. There's endless stories now of people in workplaces being done over and having their free speech undermined because they've tweeted something and then they get the sack from their job, even though they've tweeted in their own time or what have you. So these things are going on, and Starmer has never even reflected on these real, new, genuine problems that are happening to people, ordinary working.
No, he doesn't. He's not interested. He just sort of shuts his eyes and goes, la, 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 la. That's what he's like. Listen, we went massively over time, I'm afraid. Baroness Claire Fox, brilliant. Thank you so much. Really good to talk to you. Such common sense in every sphere that we got to there. Independent peer and director of the Academy of Ideas. Such a brilliant woman. We've got so many messages coming in. I'm going to try and get to all of them, but it's going to be tough. Let's get a quick voice note from Adrian.
Hi Mike, Adrian from Heathfield. I think I tend to agree with your view of what's going on with Trump and all these money markets. Liz Truss, she came into power, wanted to be Prime Minister looking after her country. And what happened? Well, all the money markets, the Bank of England, all these independent people, the people we have no control over, who is elected, who's involved, all conspired and got rid of her and upset all the markets. And now Trump, a man who has been elected by his people, and all the pundits, Bob and everyone else, all the money markets, all the world banks, everyone will say how awful it is and suddenly instability and world chaos just shows you who really runs the world. And what hacks them off more than anything else? It's a man actually democratically elected, working for his people.
Adrian, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. More coming up after this.
The Brits get a B, and you're complaining that you only got a B grade while everybody else gets a D. It's like,
we're among 60 countries who got the D grade.
Why can't you celebrate the fact that it's only 10% and that you can negotiate your way out of it if you take certain measures?
OK, give us some advice. What can we pass on to Kier Starmer?
I think the logic for all nations is clear. Don't penalise our products, then you won't have punitive tariffs. It's really that easy. It's nothing more complicated. The mathematics are very simple.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Talk. This is the Home of Common Sense. It's 8:30. We're running a little bit late. Lucy says this: thank goodness for Talk. How about getting illegal immigrants to pay for their board and lodging by cleaning up Birmingham? Well, that's not a bad idea. And one here from Elle in Wales, who says, my son has recently been diagnosed with ADHD. He's nearly 40. He's incredibly clever, hard-working engineer and an all-round genuine nice guy. Being neurodiverse is a huge bonus. They are problem solvers. They think out of the box and fix things. It needn't be labelled as an illness. It can be a huge bonus in the right career. If he didn't work, he would go bonkers. Well, I think that's right. We'll talk some more about that. Let's talk now, though, about Lucy Letby. Mark McDonald joins me. He's a barrister for Lucy, and he's just basically delivered a report to the Criminal Case Review Commission in which a dossier has been put together putting alternative diagnoses for Lucy Letby's victims. And so let's see what they do with that. Mark, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Rick. How are you? Good to be on the show again.
Yeah, nice to talk to you. Tell us a little bit about this. This is the findings of an international panel of 14 specialists who have put this together. What have they? How long have they been looking at it? What have they come up with?
Well, the full report was delivered to me, I think about 2 weeks ago. Right. I was also waiting for another report which involves 7 other international experts, and once that arrived, I delivered it yesterday to the CCRC. And in essence, what it is, it's probably the largest review of neonatal medicine in the UK criminal justice system that's ever taken place. It's gone through everything. I mean, absolutely everything that was from clinical evidence that was put before the jury and found it wanting and saying, in conclusion, it's over 1,000 pages, in conclusion saying that no crime was committed here.
Right. So there's sort of what you might call, for the layman, I suppose, certainly credible evidence that other methods of death could have been the case.
I mean, yeah, you don't get any more authority than this. I mean, that's the thing. But you have the starting place is looking at what was presented before the jury by the prosecution. The lead prosecution expert wasn't a neonatologist. He was, in fact, a paediatrician and had been retired for 15 years. And so we say, well, the starting point, we say, is, in fact, the criminal justice system has got this very wrong, and the level and the threshold of what is an expert is so low that that evidence is allowed to go before the jury. That's a starting point. But in fact, I've gone to the best in the world, and I've simply said, look, can you just tell me what was said before the jury? Is that an accurate reflection of these hospital notes? And they've all said no.
Right.
And it must remember, Mike, and this is really important because, it was a bit of a gamble for the defence team. It was a bit of a gamble for me and for Lucy, because when Shu Lee was asked, Professor Shu Lee, who's based in Canada, was asked to look at this, he said, I will do it on one condition. I will put all these experts together from across the world. We will analyse the medical notes and the expert reports that were put before the jury. And if we find that Lucy Letby has done something wrong, we will tell the world. So you're taking a gamble. If we find he hasn't done something wrong, then we'll tell the world as well. Yeah. But I did not know what they were going to say until the final report was released.
Right. And so the gamble, in a way, paid off, I suppose. What happens now? What did the Criminal Case Review Commission do?
Well, look, this is the biggest problem that we face, of course. I've got to get this back to the Court of Appeal. Yeah. This has got to be dealt with by, the Lord Justices of Appeal. Everything's got to be put in front of them. But I cannot do that until the CCRC gives permission for it to happen. My deepest concern, because there's been a big spotlight on the CCRC, as you know, in recent years, that they may take some time to do this. And I'm saying that the evidence is now overwhelming. This has got to get back to the judges. Yeah. They've got to look at this. And so I've got to wait. I've simply got to wait.
And what's the threshold for them in terms of, I suppose it's difficult, it's a $64,000 question really, but what do you think the threshold for them to make a decision in your favour would be?
Yeah. So what they do is they put themselves in the position of the Court of Appeal, and they ask the question is, well, if this went before the Court of Appeal, would it succeed?
Right.
And the problem with that is, if you get to the Court of Appeal, I can call all the evidence, physically call it, to give evidence before the jury. It can be tested by the judges. That doesn't happen with the CCRC. They just read the paper. Now, I say, actually, what the reports say is good enough to actually get this to the Court of Appeal. But they have to put themselves in the position of, well, look, sort of, in effect, de facto Court of Appeal, would they accept it? And what's happened in the past, and some of the criticism is that they're a bit scared of the Court of Appeal, and they don't refer back to the Court of Appeal because the Court of Appeal may criticise them, saying, "Well, why have you referred this? This is plainly not good enough argument that's been put forward." And so sometimes they can be a bit differential and not do it. And that's what we found in other cases. And there was an independent report into them. And as you know, the head of the CCRC has recently resigned. So I'm hoping now that lessons learned, they see what I put in, and they see its worth, and they send this back to the Court of Appeal straight away.
Yes. Well, we wish you luck with it because, I think even a lot of people who even at the beginning didn't know or didn't really have a view on this have now thought that at the very least there should be another look at it, for sure.
That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah, Mark McDonald, thank you very much indeed, barrister for Lucy Letby there. And let's have a voice note from Maz.
Hi, Mike. This is Maz from Cyprus. Flying back today, had a great time here for 1 month in Larnaca, Cyprus. What a difference to the UK. Oh, I'm dreading coming back, I really am.
Maz, if I were you, I'd just stay on the RAS, mate, because it sounds like that's what you've been doing for the last month. So, yeah, don't bother. Stay where you are, mate. What's the point? Let's get a gaff out of Jeremy Kyle and Harry Cole.
The legend that is Harry Cole, thank you very much indeed.
See you later.
All the latest you want, immigration, Harry and Meghan in the sun, each and every day by 4:23. You want to be on drive time between now and 7. Oh, double. No, it isn't. What is it? Oh, actually, let's get Harry to do the number. It's his favourite bit. Go.
03.
He didn't know the number. Never mind. It's 0344 499 1000. Coming up, we're going to speak to Stephen Dorrell about the NHS.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:39. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. David says, all Starmer wants is the limelight, the look at me factor. He says, great show, absolutely right. And Brad in Cambridge says, that programme Adolescence is massively overhyped. Like you, the moment these things start to take on a cult status, I'm turned off completely. People just seem to continuously be looking for some icon to flock to. Well, there is a bit of that as well. One thing about young people not working. This is from Mark, who says, young people aren't working because they have had their hope removed, can't get anywhere to live, so don't start a family. Now being discriminated against, who can blame them? Well, no, I don't buy that, Mark, I'm afraid. I mean, it's always been difficult being young. It's never been easy. It's never been easy to go out and find yourself a job. It's never been easy to decide whether you want to go to college or not. It's never been easy to decide whether to leave home. None of that's ever been easy, and it can be done. And I think the trouble is, and I mean, maybe there is some truth to this, that people have been trained that work isn't very interesting and that work isn't very necessary to do because of COVID, and that they were told that your health is more important than your wealth, and your health is more important than your job. Yeah, maybe that's true. But, you know, I still know plenty of young people who get out there and do it. And I've got this from Mick in Ely, who says, morning, Mike. My daughter moved to Dubai at the age of 22 with minimal qualifications. 5.5 years later, she owns a brand new studio apartment and a brand new 3-bedroom townhouse. She works for a property company. She's got a brilliant work ethic and wants to get on in life selling in Dubai's marina. Well, there you go. Lucky old her. But we've got some great weather coming up here, so, you know, listen, this is as good a place to be as any. Stephen Dorrell's here, former Conservative Health Secretary. We've got a bad story for the NHS for you, Stephen, today. Apparently NHS hospitals and buildings are crumbling. They're plagued by vermin, and I don't just mean the unions, and crippled by sewage leaks, apparently. Good morning.
Well, morning, Mike. I think the fact that NHS buildings are in disrepair is hardly a state secret. It's something that the government needs to attach a much higher priority to ensure that we're not trying to deliver 21st century healthcare in 19th or 20th century buildings that haven't been properly maintained. Some of the older buildings can be maintained and developed. but some of them have been neglected. Anyone who walks into some of our older hospitals can see that around them, unfortunately.
I mean, a poll of 9,000 members found the workplace is crawling with rats, cockroaches, silverfish and other pests. I mean, it doesn't sound very healthy apart from anything else.
No, well, quite. I don't think I don't think that's the norm, but what is too often the norm, actually, is buildings that have been where the repairs have fallen behind.
Yes.
And where there are leaks and equipment hasn't been maintained and kept up to date. And that has, that's partly the conventional point that that none of us want to be in a rundown building.
No.
But it's also, if the electronic equipment isn't kept up to date, we've seen there's risks of security breaches and data breaches as well.
That is the problem, isn't it? Because, I mean, I've been talking to a lot of people over the course of the last week or so, members of the public who are telling me that their experiences in the NHS, because I've got, I mean, there's one of my particular bugbears at the moment that I'm talking about a lot, because West Streeting keeps talking about how they're removing people from waiting lists and they're working on the waiting list and the numbers are coming down faster than ever, 2 million more appointments, etc. A lot of people are telling me that they're getting appointments made for things they've been waiting for quite a long time. And then as they get closer to the point where they're supposed to have the appointment gets cancelled. And my belief is that they're then being moved onto another waiting list. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm sure that happens. The waiting lists are edging down. They're down by a tiny proportion given the scale of the waiting list. And of course, there are far too many stories, given that we're now moving into spring and early summer, of urgent and emergency care provision that isn't being given within what was supposed to be the target of 95% within 4 hours. So we haven't hit that target for years now. And so improving access to urgent and emergency care is part of the solution. Improving waiting lists and is clearly part of it. And key to all of this, and I say the same thing every time you ask me about it, is that getting a better access to social care and to primary care, because too often people end up in these overcrowded and ill-maintained hospitals that should never be there in the first place. If they were properly supported in the community with properly funded social care services and properly funded primary care services.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we hear an awful lot, and I know this might require joined-up thinking from the government, which is never easy if you're in government, as you know yourself, Stephen. You know, more than 500,000 young people that are not working or studying have never had a job, as a piece of the Times today. Somebody suggested earlier, you know, if there's 200,000 sort of, you know, job vacancies in the NHS, shouldn't we be pointing some of these people, these young people, into an NHS job and saying, look, here's a bunch of jobs, have a look at these, maybe you'd like one of them, maybe you could go and work in it, maybe it would be a vocation for you. Should we not be sort of using, you know, cajoling, shall we say, these young people who've never worked into a very worthwhile career?
Well, before we say that what the health service needs is more people, I think what we should first say, if I may say so, is how does the health service use the people it's got more effectively and more efficiently? Because obviously just transferring an employment issue or problem into the health service, if you're not jolly careful, just means that you're spending more on the health service and still not getting the efficiency you're looking for. So my first thought, my highest priority, I think, should be to take the resources, both the financial resources and the human resources that are already available to the health service, and ask how we can use those better to deliver the objectives we have for the health and social care system that already absorbs very substantial sums of public money.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely right. Stephen, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Former Conservative Health Secretary there. Talking a lot of sense, after all. Morning, Mike, says Brad. Claire Fox is brilliant. Every time she's on, she talks common sense. I wish she were in government. Yeah, that would be a great addition if they could find a job for Claire Fox. Mick says eventually every baby will be wrapped in cotton wool or bubble wrap at birth for their own safety. And Fens from Surrey says, morning, Mike. Sadly, Claire Fox is 100% correct. Labour will blame the economic shortfall of our economy on Trump. He's the perfect bogeyman. Save her clip and show it in 12 months' time. Absolutely great show. One here from Sue says, Mike, the young people who don't work should be made to volunteer in charity shops for their benefits. Not only will it give them experience, but I know from experience that charity shops are crying out for help. The shop I volunteer for often has to close due to a lack of help. Interesting. Well, that's another one that they could be doing. Let's get a voice note from Tim.
Hi, Mike. Tim in Halifax here. Just thinking about all these unemployed people, those who've never worked. Just look around my area and there's drains blocked, there's litter, there's loads of jobs need doing. Why aren't these people working? They could all be given jobs for local councils. So if they get, for example, £300 in benefits a month or a week, minimum wage is, let's say, £10, then they work 30 hours for that £300. They work 30 hours in the community and they earn the benefits. Then they're not benefits, they then become wages and we get people back into work.
I think that's a great idea. But of course, an awful lot of those jobs you described there, Tim, are supposed to be jobs that are being done by council workers. So what are they doing? You know, drains are supposed to be cleared by the guys with those big, you know, hoses that they stick down them. Do you ever see those anymore? I haven't seen one of those for ages. You know, those horrible sort of foul-smelling, you know, drain cleaning lorries that used to go really slowly down the side of the road. Never seen them anymore. On the subject of pub rounds, right, because apparently pub rounds are a thing of the past. One here from somebody who doesn't give a name. Meet up with 6 mates and some will not get to buy their round because not everyone can drink 6 pints in an evening. Brackets lightweights. So now the culture appears to be only buy your own pint, which is fairer. Well, it's not. I mean, it's not as sociable, though, is it? I mean, if you buy a round for 6 people, then that's a sociable thing to do. What do you mean you can't drink 6 pints? Well, drink something else then. This is Morning Glory.
It sounds obviously as though the Tories will go against it, but they've only got about 130 MPs. So all those Labour MPs are pretty much going to support this. What happens to the
Do you think so? Or do you get a sense, I mean, this is what I saw, which I'm beginning to see discontent already within the Labour rank and file, because they can see that their constituencies are in peril. I think many of their constituents will be saying, look, I think most like-minded people will be saying this Chagos deal is a joke.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:51, welcome back to Morning Glory. Morning, Mike. Lovely show as ever, says Warwick from Devon. It's going to be really good weather for several days now. Rachel Reeves will be working out how to tax it. Yeah, absolutely right. Also, bad news for Yvette Cooper, isn't it? Because Yvette Cooper, of course, claimed that the reason that so many people are coming here from Calais across the channel, the migrants, the illegal migrants, is because of the weather. and you can bet your bottom dollar there'll be plenty of them. Mick in Wellington says, should we refer Mayor Khan to prevent for parroting Hamas propaganda? And Damon from Wigan wants to talk about Bob Seeley. He says, as regards your guest Bob, I just want to say that all politicians over the years have not put the United Kingdom first, and this is why they have such a problem with Donald Trump. I just wish that Don was our Prime Minister, because the United Kingdom would be a better place to live and we would have a future to look forward to. Absolutely right. I think a lot of people feel the same way. Now, let's talk to Duncan McCourt. He's the CEO of Sustainable Aviation, because the news this morning is that Luton Airport is going to get the go-ahead and the green light for a multi-billion-pound expansion. So much for net zero. Let's find out what's happening. Duncan, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Good to talk to you, sir. I mean, how are they going to expand Luton Airport? Are they going to make it possible for bigger planes to fly in and out? Is it going to become a sort of international hub for long haul more than it is now?
I think it probably won't be a long-haul airport, but it will have greater capacity. And we need that because there's significant demand for growth in aviation in the UK.
Yeah, so all of this talk about, you know, Ed Miliband saying things like we shouldn't really be flying unless we absolutely have to, or unless you're going to a climate conference, because that's obviously fine. You know, that's not really being picked up and run with by anybody sensible. People realise that you've got to use planes to get around.
There is continued demand for growth in aviation, but I think, and the aviation industry also broadly thinks, that we can grow the demand for and supply of aviation while still decarbonising. Right. So the industry has a clear plan to do that. And is that all
about the type of fuel? How does that work?
Yeah, so a big part of it is using sustainable aviation fuel. But also flying more efficient planes. Each plane is more fuel efficient and emits less carbon and is quieter than the one it replaces. Yeah. Modernising airspace, so flying more direct routes, and then also using a portion of carbon capture and storage.
And how far along is the development of this alternative fuel? Because I'm told it's quite expensive, isn't it?
Well, every plane that flies from the UK now uses a proportion of sustainable aviation fuel. That will go up over time. Right. 10% in 2030 and more than 20% in 2040. But every plane leaving now uses a small proportion of sustainable aviation fuel. The real challenge is whether we import that or whether we produce it here. Right. And if we can get to the point where we produce a lot of it here, that's a great economic opportunity for the UK.
Well, certainly it was pointed out, I think, to Kier Starmer and to Rachel Reeves that you could produce it here. They could have produced it in Grangemouth, but they've shut Grangemouth down, haven't they?
I think there are ongoing conversations about Grangemouth. There are also plans to make sustainable aviation fuel in pretty advanced plans in 5 or 6 parts of the UK, right. East Side and Humberside, among others. The government is working quite hard to do this. There is a process going through Parliament at the moment for what's called a revenue certainty mechanism, which effectively takes some of the risk out of the producers of SAF plants. And that's important to get because these are relatively novel plants and we need to get them built at scale to provide the fuel for aviation.
Yeah, but is it more expensive, or will it be more expensive?
It's currently a bit more expensive. It's a relatively new fuel. The challenge with all of these things is to scale them up, and with scale we can reduce the cost.
Because I think, most passengers certainly listening to this show would want the prices to either go down or stay the same, not to go up to fly.
Yeah, I mean, the government has forecast the additional cost of producing sustainable or aviation fuel, or using sustainable aviation fuel, as effectively within the normal bounds of the movement of aviation fuel. As I'm sure you know, aviation fuel prices go up and down as the oil price goes up and down. So the government's forecast is that it should be within that range.
Trouble is, the government forecasting's not been that great lately, has it? So we'll have to take your word for that. So how long do you think before all planes are flying with all of this sustainable fuel, like 100% of it?
Oh, I think that's quite a long way off.
Like decades or years or what?
Decades probably,
really?
Until flying with 100% sustainable aviation fuel.
Right.
We're using increasing proportions of it in in a mix with conventional jet fuel at the moment.
Okay. Interesting. Duncan, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Duncan McCourt there, CEO of Sustainable Aviation. We're quite a long way off, as you heard there, from using all of this sustainable. I don't really mind sustainable fuel as long as it's cheaper. But if it's more expensive, I'm not absolutely sure I want it. Here's John from Bakewell. Hi, Mike. What my daughter does with her friends when they go out partying, they put money into a kitty, say £20 each. One dedicated person goes up to the bar every time. I know what the round is, and then it's split evenly at the end if there's any money left. Not a bad system, I suppose, but it's not going to go very far if you're spending £7 on a pint. Morning, Mike. All my 3 adult children work, says Sarah. My 21-year-old daughter is currently touring Australia, paid for by money she worked very hard for. I'm proud of all 3 of them. Not all youngsters are lazy and work shy. No, absolutely. I'm very, very sure that that's not true. The same goes for mine. One here from somebody who doesn't give a name, unfortunately. I know you like an Angry Bird story. Here's a headline from the Romford Recorder on the 2nd of April that might amuse you. Walkers attacked in Havering Country Park by a buzzard. Apparently several walkers have been buzzed by this angry bird. We'll see if we can check that out. Morning, Mike. Well, I agree with you on a lot of what you say about the mini TV series Adolescence. I think there's a good message to parents to keep an eye on what their children are viewing on their computers in the bedroom. Only allow them to use the technology where they can be monitored, says Chris in Ottershaw. Yeah, and let's face it, look, if everybody thinks it's such a good show, the parents can let the kids watch it at home, can't they? Because that's where they should be watching it, not in school, as dictated to by Kier Starmer, the great dictator, the great leader who tells us now what we should be watching in our schools. Amanda says from Northants, is there a correlation between those young adults out of work and their education status? How many have gone through an ex-polytechnic to obtain a poor second in a Mickey Mouse degree? Technical colleges need to be reintroduced. Well, again, I've said this before, there's no doubt that it would be a lot better in this country if we could train more people in trades, right? Kenny from Edinburgh says, hi, Mike, I've been working for almost 30 years now, and it's not just because I have to, but because I want to. It's brilliant for my mental health. I get to talk to people that aren't my mates or family every day, and I'm never short of things to blether about. Having a job is a reason to get me up in the morning, and it's what's kept me in good mental and physical health for my whole adult life. So younger people need to realise that not getting out of your bed until noon will do them harm in the long run. I think that's also a very good point as well. Lots of you have got so much to say today on this young people not working story. It's quite fascinating. Front page of the Times, of course. Coming up in the next hour, we've got Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor, talking to us from College Green down in Westminster. It's a beautiful, warm day. We'll find out from him what he makes of what Kier Starmer has been doing this week. And we'll find out exactly what he would do to get 500,000 young people back to work. Also, we'll be talking about more transgender madness as well. This is Talk.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of £70.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 9. We are in the final hour of the show. Alex Phillips here at 10 o'clock, of course. It is Friday, so Plank of the Week is upon us as well. That's at 7 o'clock tonight. You can catch that on YouTube and on talkTV stream there as well, of course. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking to Fiona McAleener about another transgender problem that's come up. Also, Mel Stride is here. He's on College Green, Shadow Chancellor. We'll ask him what he makes of Kier Starmer's performance this week, and also his performance over the 5 years that he's been leader of the Labour Party. Today, apparently, is his anniversary, and we've been, shall we say, commemorating it. Not exactly celebrating, because there's not much to celebrate. The markets have gone haywire, of course, thanks to the Donald Trump tariffs. I've been talking to you about that this morning, but taking a slightly different view than most media outlets, who seem to be panicking full square, saying it's all doom and gloom for the economy, it's all ghastly, it's all gone horribly wrong. We had Bob Seeley on this morning, first thing, saying that he thinks Donald Trump is economically illiterate, doesn't think he's doing the right thing at all, thinks he's destroying the world's trade patterns and destroying all world economies. Well, I don't think any of that's true, actually, and I think that the markets will right themselves, as they always do, and the stock marketeers, those people who make money when the markets go down and up, will still be buying themselves Ferraris in January when the new models come out. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We'll talk about Sadiq Khan being accused of being a Hamas propagandist by Israel, which is an extraordinary story. We'll also talk about an expansion of Luton Airport. Prince Harry's back in the news on the front pages, of course, as well. And the big story that we've done today, that most of you have been more interested in than anything, is, of course, the 500,000 people, young people, a wasted generation they're being called, who have never worked at all. Just never had a job. Let's get a voice note from Mark.
I just had to call in and say, what a fantastic programme this morning. Claire Fox, what an absolute breath of fresh air. So much common sense every time she comes in. And your discussion with Mr. Seeley this morning, it's just a lesson in how to talk to someone that doesn't always agree with you without it descending into some sort of rancorous dispute. Fantastic, mate. Keep up the good work.
Mark, you're very kind. We are, of course, the world headquarters of common sense, the home of common sense. It's the only thing we know how to do. And, of course, you can get it all the way through the day, all the way from now until this time tomorrow. And just for good measure, Plank of the Week coming up, as I say, tonight. And you can always get the Morning Glory podcast as well. If you talk to people who say they can't listen at this time in the morning because they're actually going to work, don't worry about it. Just get the podcast and listen in later. 0344 499 1000 is the number. 5 minutes past 9. Let's get it on. Francis has sent a very thoughtful message here, and I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get around to it, from Wilton. You seem to suggest, she says this morning, the stock markets are all based on speculation. To a degree, in reality, it is about profitability. That is base camp. If markets perceive a drop in profits or expectations, including bubbles corrected, they will fall. Investors look for an upside in value and or income, depending upon objectives. Precious little upside in the UK right now. The FTSE 100 is essentially representative of global companies, so it's not UK specific. I think that's a good point. So it's got nothing really to do with necessarily the economy in the UK. And one here from Julie, who says, "Morning, Mike. I left school at 16. My parents told me either do further education or get a job. I hated school, so I had to work. In the 80s, there were no jobs, so I took a YTD, youth training scheme, on £23.50 a week. I had to save up just to buy a pair of jeans. No way would my parents not let me sit at home and have shame by being on the dole. A lot of kids now are just lazy and feel entitled." Well, certainly 500,000 of them will say they can't find a job. They're not looking for a job. They don't want a job. And that's part of the problem. Let's talk to Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor down at Westminster College Green. A beautiful morning for it, I think. Mel, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Very good to see you. Let's talk about a great many things. I mean, the story that seems to have gripped people most this morning is the story, and I know everybody's focusing on the tariffs and they're all going mad about the stock market. I'm less concerned about that because I believe that that will all kind of right itself in the end, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But it's this story on the front page of the Times today of 500,000 young people who are not looking for a job, don't appear to want a job, they're not in education, and we really need to do something about that, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. And we were when we were in office, actually, and we've seen this government actually beginning to unwind some of that. So some of it, Mike, is around the benefits and welfare system, where we brought in reforms that were actually driving up the level of employment and getting people off those particular benefits. And the changes that the Labour Party made at their recent emergency budget have unwound that. And the Office of Budget Responsibility actually saying there'll be fewer people in work as a result of the changes that the Labour Party has made to welfare. But there are other issues, and tax is one of them, Mike. You know, I mean, how do you have an economy that's generating the kind of jobs that young people are going to get excited about getting involved with if you're slapping national insurance hikes on businesses? This is £25 billion of extra taxes, slowing those companies down. It's not just the rate, it's also the threshold, the earnings level at which the tax actually kicks in. So Labour have just about halved that. And that means a lot of lower wage, younger people's jobs are being destroyed by this government. And that, of course, is a real part of the problem.
Yeah, and absolutely. As we get through April, companies are going to be under more pressure because of the national insurance rise. We're soon going to have the Workers' Rights Bill coming in, which I was talking to Claire Fox about a little bit earlier. Is going to destroy an awful lot of careers. You know, an awful lot of people who are freelancers in the media business, a lot of people in the arts who work sort of for themselves. It's going to kind of throw all of that into uncertainty, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've got to be taking regulation off business, not putting it on business. We've got to be making the tax burden on business lower, not higher. I was just down with Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, yesterday in his constituency in Purley, talking to a small business there, a small garage doing repairs and resprays and so on. And they've just had a real shock. They've had an increase in their business rates as a result of the changes and the reliefs that this government's just brought in, of tripling the business rates that they're paying. So these businesses are facing higher costs on employing people, higher business rates, at a time when, you know, we are under real pressure as an economy, and it's just the wrong thing for this government to have done.
Yeah, I mean, it's squeezing people. I mean, it's until they squeak. I mean, but they really, I mean, the pips can't be squeaking anymore, I don't think. It is, as you probably are aware, the 5th anniversary of Kier Starmer becoming the leader of the Labour Party. We put together a little tribute for him. Have a look at this.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner. The relationship between our two nations has been one of collaboration. I'm anti-Trump, cooperation. But don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected, and enduring partnership. Never happened before. This is unprecedented. And I think that just symbolises the strength of the relationship between us. I'm delighted that the inspiring Nobel Peace, Nobel Prize winner.
True democracy is citizen-led. We demand a people's house!
This project has always been about fixing the foundations of our country.
It must be really incredible to be part of building, I mean, actually here, not just building. Smash the gangs to smash the people smuggling gangs.
Could you please join me when I say 5?
That man is not allowed in my pub.
4.
That's assault.
3.
That man is not allowed in my pub.
2.
Get out of my pub. Go on.
1.
Get out of my pub.
Yay! It worked. Yeah, it worked, which is more you can say for the government, I'm afraid.
Yes, Mike. I mean, I wish I could have seen it. Where I am, I can't actually see what your viewers will have seen. But look, it's all over the place, isn't it? That's the point. This is a Prime Minister that came into government without a plan. And, you know, when I hear Kier Starmer in your clip there saying that they're sorting out the foundations of the economy, given what they've done to our economy, I just think is just extraordinary. You know, this is the party that said it's going to be growth, growth, growth under a Labour government. We won't be putting people's taxes up left, right and centre. They got into office. They did exactly that. talked down the animals' spirits, destroyed growth, inflated the economy, put up interest rates, and we've seen the unedifying sight of a Chancellor who blew all her fiscal credibility and fiscal headroom from the autumn, have to come back to the House of Commons to rebuild it, and has created, far from sorting out the foundations of our economy, they've created a very fragile economy at the very point that we're facing these kind of additional pressures by way of tariffs.
Yes.
So,
and what's the Tory sort of line?
Government.
What's the sort of Tory line on the tariffs? I mean, obviously we can say that 10% is better than 20% thanks to Brexit. We're outside of the European Union, but I sort of take the view that we've been having tariffs and different levies on different countries for years and years and years. I don't quite understand the slight hysteria that a lot of people seem to be getting their knickers in a twist over just because Donald Trump's putting some tariffs on some people.
Well, no, I'm afraid I'd have to disagree with you there, Mike. So if you have a high tariff wall around a country, and that's what the United States has now set out for its own economy, the immediate effect is that prices increase because you're increasing the price of imports into your economy, and that is inflationary. That requires higher interest rates, and what you might see in America actually is that the costs of servicing their very large amount of debt over there goes up to the extent that the US finds it difficult to cut, or more difficult to cut taxes, which is what they really want to do. And in the longer term, the problem is by shutting out foreign competition, you drive down competition in your domestic market, which means less innovation, less competition, and less growth and productivity in the medium to longer term. So I think there's very, very well established evidence that lower tariffs, free trade are good for growth and good for prosperity and people's living standards. And I'm afraid putting them up like this, I think is going to be deeply difficult.
Well, maybe somebody should tell that to the EU, because they've been putting tariffs on things for years, haven't they?
Well, yeah, we want, personally, I'm a free trader, it's in the Conservative Party's DNA to have tariffs as low as possible, and that's why we've been out there when we were in government negotiating these free trade deals with all sorts of parts of the world, including, of course, the Asia-Pacific area, well outside of the EU, which is one of the fastest growing areas of the global economy. So, I'm a free trader. I want us to do more of that. And if we get the opportunity to get back into government, we will be looking at lower tariffs and a strong emphasis on free trade and growth.
One of the other stories we're looking at today, Mel, is about Sadiq Khan. He's in the news this morning because of a message that he gave out for Eid, right? He's been accused by the Israeli government of parroting Hamas propaganda. Let's just, I know you won't be able to see this, but you'll be able to hear what he said.
This year, for many, the usual happiness we feel during Eid will be tempered by the appalling suffering and killing that continues in Sudan and Palestine. More than 50,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza as a result of Israel's ongoing military campaign, including more than 15,000 children. While in Sudan, tens of thousands have been killed.
I mean, apart from the fact that everybody knows that is a Hamas figure that he was using there, it comes to something, doesn't it? It's pretty embarrassing that the Mayor of London is accused of being a propagandist for a terrorist organisation in the Middle East.
Well, look, Mike, I think we should recognise without any equivocation that Hamas is a terrorist organisation. We should never forget what happened back in October 2022 with that appalling massacre conducted by Hamas and, of course, the holding of hostages, many of whom have died and some are still in captivity. And, that's how I think of Hamas when I think of Hamas.
Yeah, exactly right. And I wonder whether Sadiq Khan will have anything to say about it today. Just one final question for you, Mel. We just heard that you being quoted on the news, actually, so I guess you said this somewhere else this morning about the possible chance of a pact between yourselves as the Conservative Party and Reform. You seem to suggest that that's never going to happen.
No, I don't think that should happen, Mike. At the end of the day, Nigel Farage has made it very clear that he wants to destroy the Conservative Party. What the Conservative Party has got to do now is to start to rebuild trust with the electorate. That will take time. It doesn't happen overnight, but we will do that by firstly holding this government to account and doing our job as an opposition, which is what the electorate put us into Parliament to do, and secondly doing that longer term thinking and work to make sure that we come up with the right solutions to give us an economy that is more productive, growing, lower tax, has a more efficient state, has a completely overhauled welfare system that's much more effective at getting people into work and doesn't come with the huge costs that we see in welfare at the moment, and a lot of supply side reforms around planning, building things again more quickly and more effectively, and getting energy costs down so that our industries can compete worldwide. That is a project that will take some time, but we have time in opposition now to do that, and I'm confident that under Kemi Badenoch that's exactly what we're going to do.
Good stuff. Mel, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Mel Stride there, Shadow Chancellor, talking to us from College Green, live in Westminster. I'll tell you what we've just been handed, and I haven't even seen this yet, so I'm not quite sure what to expect. But check this out, right? King Charles apparently is playing a carrot flute. I mean, I'm sorry, it doesn't conjure up a great image. He's apparently playing with the London Vegetable Orchestra. Have a look. Crikey. Makes you proud to be British, doesn't it? Let's get another gaff, shall we? Here's Jeremy Carr.
Had 1% of that with our politicians in power.
Oh, hold on a second. If you are tuning in, it's suddenly gone dark behind me. We're now in the night time. It's the sunniest day of the year, and somebody's... Oh, we're back. Vernon, I agree. I mean, what I don't understand is...
It's just some kind of change if you're not watching it. The background behind him, like the one behind me, just kept changing. And sometimes going completely black. I don't know why. We've got much more to do. Morning, Mike. Another important point, says Stuart in Perthshire, about getting that first job is that it's far easier than to find a better job, as employers will respect the fact that you're working, even if it isn't your ideal job. It's harder to get a job when you say you're not working. I said this earlier, absolutely right. One here from Ian, he says, Mike, force the unemployed to work for the local councils as unskilled workers. They might even learn a skill. We might even lower our council tax bills. Absolutely right. I mean, if you're going to pay people benefits, if they are unemployed and they don't particularly want to be, or if they can work, then surely you should give them something to do. Kenny from Edinburgh says, morning Mike, why the hell would I buy an £11 jar of jam from Meghan Markle when I can get an 89p jar from the local Lidl's that doesn't come with a supersized dollop of arrogance from the lady at the checkout? Well, exactly right. And one here from Carolyn, Shoreham by Sea. Yes, the broken windows policy definitely works and is exactly what this whole country desperately needs before it's too late. Deport all the foreign criminals and overstayers, lose our borders, and let's get our towns, villages and cities back. I presume you don't mean lose our borders, you probably mean defend them. Thanks for your brilliant shows, Mike. Have a great weekend. Yeah, well, I'll certainly try. There's lots going on. My family are all visiting at the moment. Kevin says this, talking about dentists, I would really love to know how they can charge nearly £100 for a 10-minute hygienist or check-up visit. It has got very expensive, hasn't it? And one here from somebody else on dentists. I'm one of those rare beasts who still has an NHS dentist. The other day, I had an appointment, and while I was in the waiting room, I heard the receptionist making a call to a parent about an appointment their child had missed that morning, and did they want to make another one from Norfolk, as it was the third appointment they'd missed. It was very clear that there hadn't been a valid reason for missing the appointments. I think that's another typo. And then surely don't make another one from Norfolk. No, don't know. Morning, Mike. Donald Trump knows exactly what he's doing. 2 words, under negotiation. Putting America first. Bash Donald Trump. No surprise there, says Margaret. Coming up, we're going to talk about a female fencer taking the knee and walking out against a transgender rival because she says she doesn't want to fence against a man. Quite right, too. 21 minutes past 9.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle, because it's Meghan Sussex now.
Flynn has said, Samara, I agree with you all the time, but you're just boring.
Hi! I refuse to work for ITV ever again. Oh! What Just Happened? Fridays at 9 on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 24 minutes past 9. I don't know where the time has gone. I don't know where the week's gone, actually. The week has flown in. It's already April the 4th. And it's going to be Easter in a couple of weeks, I think, isn't it? Unbelievable stuff. Good Friday. I'll be working, of course. I don't take Easter off. What's the point? And I'll be resurrected again on Monday. Thanks very much indeed. It's just one of the Christians. Let's get a voice note from Richard.
Hi, Mike. Richard Macclesfield here. So the state of the buildings at the NHS, could that be because all the works are contracted out? And as always, NHS will be paying top dollar instead of having an actual set of tradespeople employed by the NHS on site, maintaining it all the time. And also, I mentioned this before, the unemployed, in order to get their funds, we need to see them cleaning, maybe at NHS locations, painting, doing the gardens, that sort of thing. So it's all contracting out again, isn't it? Contract out, rubbish service, very expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. There's got to be stuff that these people could be doing. There's got to be, especially young people who've never had a job. And I take the point that during COVID, they were told basically working's not that important. You don't have to go anywhere to work. You can just do it from home if you want. And if you don't feel like it because you're feeling a bit down that day, just don't bother. And I think there's some truth to that. But let's talk now to Sharon Davis, MBE, Olympic medalist and swimmer, of course, and Fiona McAnina, from the director of Sex Matters. Another story that's come across the desk on the transgenders in sports situation. A female fencer disqualified from a tournament after taking a knee and refusing to compete against her transgender opponent because she said that she didn't want to fence a man. There's a picture of it in the story I'm looking at now. It happened in the University of Maryland over in the US of A. Let's talk to Sharon Davis first. Sharon, very good morning to you. As soon as I saw this story, I thought to myself, fencing sounds like one of those sports that you'd probably not want to fence against a man because the man with the sword is going to be probably quite a lot stronger than the woman with the sword.
Yeah, I mean, we know explosive power is where the biggest difference is. For example, a male will punch 160% harder than a female. So obviously when you're lunging, it makes a huge difference. And these foils do break, and a lot of the fencers will end up with bruises at the end of matches. If you imagine you're actually fighting a man who's got a much bigger explosive power, he's got a longer reach than you, he's going to be taller than you, it's a huge disadvantage. I mean, here in the UK, thank goodness, British fencing do protect the female category. We're hoping at the Olympic Games, obviously in LA, that Mr. Trump will do his thing and that the women's category will be protected. But a lot of the Democrat states in America, they're really not protecting their female athletes at all. Right. And they're enabling this to happen. And this particular individual was a very mediocre fencer against males just 1 year ago. It's a very similar story to Leah
was
Thomas.
The same, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they won not one single match against males and is now throwing the shot put and winning state championships, throwing the discus, and obviously going into fencing competitions and winning against women as well and taking women's opportunities away from them. It's just incredibly dangerous and incredibly unfair.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's bring Fiona into the conversation. Fiona McAnina. Morning to you, Fiona. I mean, I don't know whether we know this, but is it known whether or not this is a transgender woman who's post-op, or is it just a man who fancies himself being a woman?
Well, I have to say, Mike, I'm not sure what difference it makes because this is a breakfast show. I won't mention the appendage that is removed in post-op, but it's not relevant in fencing, is it? And actually, when people go through what they call medical transition, it really makes very little difference to their sporting capability. Right. They don't shrink. They don't really lose much power. And they're still people who've benefited through male development all the way through their lives up to that point. So we'd say that makes no difference. I will say this has been going on in fencing internationally for 10 years. And it's great we're talking about it now, and sports are finally starting to recognize that they can't just pretend that a few perhaps distressed or you know, these men who think that they're women or want to be women, they can't just pretend that those men must be accommodated and that it doesn't harm anyone. It clearly does harm a great many women.
Well, of course. And Sharon, back to you. I mean, the reason I asked the question is because I suppose to me it would seem clearer about the motivation for somebody doing this, because it seems to me that if you are a man and you're not a very good fencer and you fancy being more successful, which could lead to you making more money, you don't even have to take on any sort of, you know, female characteristics. You don't have to take any drugs. You don't have to have any operations. You just declare yourself to be a woman and away you go.
Yeah, in fact, you could declare yourself a woman today and a man tomorrow and a woman the next day, and they would still accommodate you. I mean, this is how absolutely crazy this is. And you're right. I mean, women have lost over $1.5 million so far in the States, predominantly. Cycling is a huge area where we see an awful lot of men identifying as women and seeing opportunities from females. And it's those places on teams, it's the pathways, it's the junior. But it's also recreational as well. You know, we've got a really bad situation in the UK where sports like football, golf, cricket, tennis are protecting the 1% of the elite, which is good that they're doing something, because for years they've done absolutely nothing, but they're not protecting 99%. So to say that these women are worthy of fairness and safety, but all of these women over here are not, is utterly ridiculous. You know, we need to just protect the female category and make everybody welcome in an open and inclusive category. We all want everyone to do sport. Yeah. Nobody wants anyone to be excluded. We just want fair sport for women. I do not understand how that is a controversial point of view. I know, it's extraordinary, isn't it, what's controversial now? Fiona, I mean, I was about to ask the question of how it is here, but it sounds like Sharon's already told us that there are problems, particularly in sort of grassroots sport, which is unfortunately where so many young women will want to go and want to learn about a sport and get good at it. And I presume many of them are getting discouraged now because they don't want to have to face that kind of problem.
Yeah, I think people make the distinction sometimes between elite sport and grassroots, but of course elite sport is a handful of people and grassroots is, you know, millions of people. And so if we make that distinction, we're ruining the pathway that brings young women through sport and brings them the possibility of becoming elite. But we're also trashing sport for half the population. Yeah. And yes, we do hear a lot of stories about this. Even something like football, girls and women are worried about safety because it's a contact sport, and if you collide and get pushed off the ball and onto the ground by a bigger, stronger man, then you risk getting injured. So there's a lot of trouble. And then even in some sports that have protected the category, like athletics, people are still cheating. There are still men entering with a female name online, turning up and racing, and in some cases getting away with it and getting prizes. So we still have a lot to do to restore fairness for women and girls.
Really? So what? So people can apply to be in an event without actually referring to themselves as trans?
Yeah, because it all happens online. Yeah, it all happens online. If you think that, you know, you enter, someone's running a race, a marathon. I mean, London Marathon actually encourages this. They say they're not licensed by UK Athletics, and they encourage trans-identifying men to enter in the mass participation category. So they protect the elite category, and then everything else is not. And it's so obviously untrue. You can't have a two-tier fairness policy. You know, it's either fair or it's not.
Right.
And we know
well, I suppose with this Labour Party, they would certainly like it if it was two-tier, because everything else is. Sharon, just finally from you, that's madness, isn't it? I mean, why on earth would anybody want to maintain something which is clearly unfair, which has been outlawed for the elites, but is somehow something they want to keep?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're spot on when you say it's just the women that lose out, because what happens is trans-identifying males want the advantage of being in the women's category, so they go into the women's category. Trans-identifying females still remain in the female category because they stand no chance of even qualifying in the men's category. And anyone that's non-binary, they will also try and go in the women's category if they can do, if there isn't a non-binary category. And non-binary doesn't exist. We're all humans of male or female. That is it. So women lose out in every single direction. And things like parkrun, you know, I mean, there is no reason why they can't add extra categories. Why can't we have a record for trans women and a trans men and have a record for females? There is no reason why we can't protect the female category, none at all. They're just almost doing it deliberately, and it's women that are losing out, young girls that are losing out, and they're self-excluding. You know, people are. I get phone calls and emails every day saying I'm just not doing this anymore, and parents particularly taking kids out of things where they think that it's mentally harming them or they're physically going to be in danger.
Oh, it's actually dangerous. Yeah, exactly right. Great to talk to both of you. Thank you very much indeed. Sharon Davis, MBE, Fiona McInerney from Sex Matters. Extraordinary times we live in, aren't they? Absolutely and utterly bleeding ridiculous. Reg says this: most of the hospitals in Oxfordshire are old terrapin buildings. Do you remember those? They were things that were like caravans on bricks. They were almost like those porter cabin type buildings, were they? Ian says, my adolescence is about poor parenting, the lack of a father's ability to respond to the kid's failings and correct his kid's emotional response to those failures. It should not be shown in schools. And Leon says, morning Mike, when my daughter was 14 and about to start her GCSEs, I sat her down and went through all the household expenses and showed her that if she wanted a nice house, a nice car, holidays, etc., she'd need a good paying job. She's now 19 at university studying psychology and she's on track for a first. She has 3 jobs at a cafe, 2 catering companies and has £6,000 in savings for a deposit on her first house. I'm so proud of her and her hard work and effort, but it starts with us, the parents, not doing it for them, but guiding them in the right direction. I couldn't agree more with that. You've absolutely got to help them to get on the road to doing their own thing, but you've also got to imbue them with the idea that they have to do it for themselves. Otherwise, what's the point? And of course you help them out when they need it, and of course you're always there for them, but you know, you want to see them doing their own thing and succeeding and being successful. It's 9:34 and let's have another gaff. This is one of mine apparently. Shocking. My favourite line in the story is this. In an accompanying interview, Prince Harry's wife, 43, was said to be clearly bothered by critics mocking her show and viewers dubbing her out of touch. And then it says, speaking from her £12 million mansion in Montecito, California, Meghan said, "It's not fair! It's not fair! I'm not out of touch! Harry! Harry!" No, I don't think that's a gaffe at all. Absolutely disgraceful. Imagine selecting that as a gaffe. Oh, it was rather good. 9:35.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Junkyard says this, right, Charlie playing the carrot flute. Was it Twinkle Twinkle or was it Bar Bar Black Sheep? Play it back again. I don't know. We're probably not allowed to play Baba Black Sheep, are you? We might have to give it another go in a minute and have another watch of it. First up, though, we're going to be talking to Mike Jones, Executive Director of Migration Watch UK. Morning, Mike. I left school in the 70s and signed on the dole, says Barry in Derbyshire. The dole office was next to a particularly busy roundabout, and even at 16, I can remember being ashamed when I walked out. After a few weeks, I signed off and went and joined the army. And one from Lou, who says, morning, Mike. Linda from Deal. Sorry, my son has been working since he was 17 and still does. He spent 2 years doing an electrician course, only to be told he can't get into that industry as there are no jobs and no one will take him on until he's 25. I'm so angry for him because this is what he wants to do. I feel he's wasted 2 years of his young adult life for nothing. That's ridiculous. What do you mean you can't be taken on until you're 25? Surely if you do an electrician's apprenticeship, you get taken on as soon as you finish, don't you? Absolute ludicrousness. Mike Jones is here, Executive Director of Migration Watch. A story that we saw yesterday was about the dirty secret of so many kebab shops where basically, and I mentioned this to somebody yesterday, bring in skilled migrant labour. And these are, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, legal migration routes. You know, people say, oh, there aren't any legal migration routes. Well, there are. All you've got to do is have a kebab shop. And there was one particular kebab shop, I think it was in the Midlands, where the guy had sponsored something like 650 separate migrants to come to this country, obviously, you know, to carve up the old elephant's leg. Ridiculous. Mike Jones, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, this is something that's clearly an abuse of the system, isn't it? And I mean, any fool could tell you that, except any fool from the Home Office. You don't seem to be able to find out, you know, they couldn't find their own backside with two hands, as they would say.
Well, yeah, visas are being handed out like takeaway menus, but Britain, I'm afraid, is not an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Very good.
You know, we've got our own people struggling, NHS waiting lists a mile long, schools packed out, rents through the roof. But, you know, there's a massive misconception here. When British people hear the term skilled worker, people automatically think of, you know, merchant bankers, air traffic controllers, GPs, scientists. Of course, such people do make it into the UK from overseas, but the points-based system has a very broad conception of what a skilled worker is. The eligible occupations list includes jobs such as butchers, poultry dressers, chefs and catering managers, and if I were to hazard a guess, such occupations provide a pipeline for kebab workers into the skilled worker visa. So, you know, ultimately, I think for the private sector, you need to get rid of the eligible occupations list and just simply cap the numbers. You can then auction the visas on the market, and obviously kebab houses wouldn't be eligible for that because they don't have reserves.
But I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? If you're applying for somebody to come and work in this country for you as a skilled worker and you're running a kebab shop, surely that would be a red flag, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, it's a feature of the system, not a bug. I mean, it's very easy for businesses to apply for issuing these visas. I mean, basically, it's an online application. If you're a small business, you pay a fee of about £500. Well, it's a bit more than that. You provide very basic evidence that you're a legitimate business, you're operational in the UK, and you just have to provide evidence that you can meet the basic sponsor duties, you know, such as record keeping. And that's it. You can issue certificates of sponsorship. And, you know, if you're Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, or, you know, a kebab house in the East End, it doesn't matter.
And how long normally do these work visas go for? A couple of years? Because we learned this week as well that there's so many people who come for, and I've always suspected this is to be true, so many people coming here on working visas. When those visas run out, they don't leave, they stay, and many of them now are claiming asylum, and as many as 10,000 of them, I believe, are actually being put up in hotels along with the illegal migrants.
Well, the temporary visas last less than a year, and obviously they're not included in the net migration numbers.
Right. So how many of these kind of visas for skilled work do you think there are?
For kebab houses, in the grand scheme of things, potentially, yeah. Although it's probably much harder now to actually issue these visas because the salary thresholds have gone up. But when Boris Johnson and Priti Patel implemented this system, the salary visas were much lower. They were about, you know, 25,500. So there was definitely a window of opportunity there for employing these people. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. You know, the eligible occupations list is organised according to what they call SOC codes, and that runs from 1 to 9. Right, number 1 and 2 are highly skilled jobs, you know, sort of chief executives and so on. 3 to 5 are medium skilled jobs, and 6 to 9 are low skilled jobs. But the list includes all of these occupations on them. So you've got this broad spectrum of low skilled, medium skilled, and high skilled occupations. And there are lots of care workers on there as well, and they fall into the low skilled category. And, you know, Boris Johnson, he let the cat out of the bag. I think it was in an interview with Harry Cole. He said, you know, there weren't people stacking shelves here in the UK. We needed this immigration. I mean, it's complete nonsense, because these aren't really shortages. They're just businesses not providing the market clearing wage. If you raise wages, improve working conditions, no shortages. People will be tempted to go into the jobs market rather than languish there on welfare.
I mean, do you think there'll be any knock-on effect from this workers' rights bill that comes in? Because maybe some employers who would have employed, you know, legal or possibly illegal migrants for less money won't now be able to do that.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, there could be second-order effects for sure. Obviously, if the more you regulate the labour market, the more that has a knock-on effect on the immigration system. So that's actually a very interesting point. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah, well, let's try and keep an eye on that. We'll check in with you a little bit later on. Final story for you today. We call it the Migrant of the Day feature that we do here now on this show, because there is one story every day pretty much. This one's about a rapist which led to a gang leader's conviction for murder, so there may now well be a price on his head. I say we shouldn't care about that. We should just send him back anyway. That's their problem, isn't it?
Yeah, deport him. Simple as that. But at this moment in time, you can't do that because of the Human Rights Act. And part of the Human Rights Act is Article 3, which is, you know, Article 3 of the European Convention of Human Rights, which is, you know, part of the Human Rights Act. And you can't deport someone if there's even the slightest chance they'll be mistreated in some way. And, you know, this was done originally for reasons of compassion, but the bar is set very, very low. So, you know, human rights lawyers, judges can basically invoke Article 3 to stop heinous people such as this migrant from being deported. So unless you actually scrap the Human Rights Act, or at the very least amend it or disapply it to immigration policy, then you're just going to have more and more of these cases coming to light.
Yeah.
And you know, the Home Office doesn't have any real power with regards to illegal immigration. They're a Potemkin institution. They're just there for show. It's the courts and the lawyers that have the real power.
That would seem to be the case, wouldn't it? But there's another story actually today about a judge having a go at one of those immigration lawyers, one of those immigration judges who sits on the immigration panel. The immigration court being criticised by a senior judge for its euphemistic and inadequate ruling in favour of illegal migrants. So maybe the tide is turning to some extent, and we're going to keep up the pressure here. But, you know, all this talk of, you know, activist judges is clearly a thing, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yeah. I mean, the media are actually doing an excellent job at the moment. They're going through, you know, the court documents and the rulings, particularly with regards to foreign national offenders, and they're looking at the reasons for why they're not being deported.
Yeah.
There are two things that crop up time and time again. Article 3, you know, you can't deport someone in case they're mistreated. And Article 8, you know, if somebody has a private and family life here, then they can't be deported. And the media are now pinning the blame rightfully on the Human Rights Act, which embeds the ECHR into law. And this is exerting a massive amount of pressure on the government. And, you know, the Labour Party are talking about Article 8 and possibly disapplying it to immigration. You know, that's a huge sea change in how some Labour MPs and councillors are looking at this.
Yeah, well, let's hope they do it. But I have my doubts, quite frankly. Mike Jones, thank you very much indeed, Executive Director of Migration Watch UK. Let's get a voice note from Steve.
Morning, Mike. Two things guaranteed from like the media outlets, the BBC, etc. One, they will be going on about how much a day Trump's tariffs are going to cost, despite never mentioning the millions and billions it costs to house all the illegals over here. And the other one is, because the weather's going to be a bit nicer today, they're straining at the leash to unleash that flame red weather map that they bring out that looks like we're all burning to death.
Yeah, in fact, it's worse than that. They were doing that like a couple of weeks ago, and it was only about 12, you know. And they now say, right, that they use the red flaming hot weather map, not because it's hot, but just because it's more accurate in depicting different temperatures. And you go, that's rubbish, absolute nuts and cobblers. Why can't you just use green, like you used to use back in the 70s or the 80s? Or in fact, I think even in the 90s. It's only recently they've brought this red flaming... I mean, we had the story yesterday, didn't we, that they're threatening wildfires. There's a wildfire alert going on. You know, it was 19 degrees yesterday. You know, it's not Southern California. You know, it's not Los Angeles. It's not Malibu. You're not going to get brush fires like they get in Australia. It's Britain. Let's face it. For heaven's sake, it's 9:48. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humphrey Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar. Hello, and lady. Unfortunately, hey, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable tank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I've just seen something which is quite extraordinary. It's a piece in The Sun, page 25. It's a Louis Vuitton chocolate egg, 189 quid. Design House teamed up with chef Maxime Frederic for the trademark pattern treat, 70% dark chocolate with milk chocolate handles, and the zip pulls up and a roasted hazelnut filling. The real leather bag, which is actually looks a bit like an Easter egg as well, costs 2,500 quid. Blimey. That's quite an expensive egg, isn't it? Easter's coming, of course, not long to go. Coming up, we've got much to do. Let's have a gaff, shall we? Well, let's get a voice note first from Yvonne on Neats.
Hi, Mike. From Yvonne here in Scotland. Yeah, just been been out the front talking to my one of my neighbours who runs a little gardening business, but they're down 2 people, just down to him and his son now, and they literally can't get anyone. They literally cannot get anyone to do it. No 16-year-old even wants it. They did have someone a few weeks ago, and he just fell asleep in the back of the van, travelling to a job. Absolutely appalling. No one available. The last person that went, they had 4 of them. He's a Czech person, and he would only work 16 hours a week. So as long as he was earning 16 hours a week, he still gets all his benefits. Anyway, he's left now. He's back in Czech for the moment, I think. But just shows how absolutely appalling that sort of gardening work. You know, why can't anyone do it?
Well, I'll tell you why, because it's quite laborious, it's quite hard, and it's actually physically exhausting. But, you know, it's a job. I don't understand why people don't want the job. It's ridiculous. Here's a gaffe, it's not quite a gaffe, but it's a reminder of something that happened on the show last week when Charlie Mullins came in to talk to me.
They're trying to rob us off, then I think we can put a stop on it.
OK, interesting. Julie Hartley-Burroughs here. Very good morning to you.
Very good morning. I mean, you'll definitely end up losing the OBE then if you break the law.
Why? But I'm not breaking the law.
Well, will be if you have to pay the taxes you're due to pay. I mean, I don't agree with it. I think it's an insane extra tax on jobs, but you still have to pay
but
it.
I'm not breaking the law,
You
am I?
campaign to change the law, not break the law.
Cool, blimey.
I'm old-fashioned.
Oh, you're not old-fashioned.
Sometimes part of your campaign to break the law is...
I bet your husband's pleased when you got work, isn't he?
That's a bit harsh.
God, you could have a row, you can, Julie.
Listen, the point... It's just the look on Julia's face there. It's brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Let's talk to Lizzie Kelly, horse racing correspondent, Talk Sport, of course. Big weekend. It all kicks off today. It's Ladies' Day. We spoke to Rupert Bell a little bit earlier on. Grand National Sweepstakes coming up. I'm looking at the page in the Sun now with all of the 34 runners. I've already had a couple of recommendations from Rupert, Lizzie, so a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Morning.
Nice to see you. I assume you're up there already. Rupert told us that Can Do Kid and Vanilla were both worth a couple of each-way bets, perhaps. What do you think?
Yeah, I do think that we've got a really open Grand National this year. I actually really like Nick Rocket. He's trained by Willie Mullins. He's ridden by Patrick Mullins. And he won the same prep race that I Am Maximus, last year's winner, won before he came to Aintree. So I think that's good form. So I do like Nick Rocket.
OK, I'm going to write that one. I'm writing all these down, you see, because what I tend to do, it's the only race I really bet on every single year, because, I mean, occasionally I'll go, which is when I bet, but I don't really bet that much. But what I do is that I get sort of two horses for every member of the family that happens to be around. Unfortunately for me this week, I've got all my family with me, so it's going to cost me quite a few quid. And when one of my kids ends up winning, I have to give them the money.
Yeah, that seems pretty unfair.
It's very unfair.
Let's charge a commission.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's been very decent weather, I suppose. But is that going to be a factor this year?
Yeah, so what it means is that obviously we've had not a lot of rain, and so the ground is drying. But what Aintree Racecourse have done is they've been watering the track to ensure that it stays good to soft, which is the sort of ground that we want. And obviously it is spring, there's no getting away from it. It is April, and the ground is always a little bit better at this time of year, but you don't want the ground to be too quick. So that is why they've been watering, and they sound like they've done a really good job. Everybody who's walked the track has been really happy with it. Right.
And I suppose, I mean, this might sound like a really stupid question, but does the temperature affect horses' performance? I'm assuming it does, because the warmer it is, I guess the harder it is for them to run.
So basically, some horses, they kind of get hot, just like a human or a dog. Right. But I would say that at Aintree we've still got quite a chilly wind. Yesterday it was still quite chilly, so I would very much doubt that we would see horses, boiling over and getting too hot. We didn't see it yesterday, and I think the temperature is meant to be about the same tomorrow. OK.
And the coverage at TalkSport starts today, presumably, with Ladies' Day.
Yeah, we were on air yesterday. We had 4 races on air yesterday, and we've got 4 again today. We had a Willie Mullins 4-timer yesterday, which was pretty frustrating for the British-based trainers. And we've got some good racing today, a couple of Grade 1s to get our teeth stuck into. So yeah, there's lots to look forward to.
Brilliant stuff. Lizzie Kelly, we'll have a lovely weekend. I'm sure it'll be very exciting, as it always is. Horse racing correspondent, TalkSport, all that live racing you can get over there on our sister station. We're very nearly at the end here. Alex Phillips has joined. Hello, Alex.
Hello. It was like the Paris catwalk looking at the shots of Ladies' Day.
Well, it's Ladies' Day. It's brilliant. It's always brilliant up there. It's fantastic stuff. Now, I've got a little surprise for you. I'm going to show you a video of... This is a story we did earlier this week about a hawk, an out-of-control hawk. I don't know if you saw it.
I've heard of this.
It's in a village just outside of Luton. Check this out.
With attacks reportedly on the rise, what began as a rather amusing tale of harassment by a hawk isn't so funny for villagers anymore. We were filming with Jim Hewitt as he made his way to the shop this morning. Before there was a chance to warn him, the hawk swooped. It is one of the most serious incidents to date. Jim gave us permission to show the damage done to his head because he believes the bird has to go by any means necessary.
I mean, look at all that blood, right?
What on earth is...
I know.
What's gone into that hawk?
I know, but nobody knows.
Eating?
Well, and he only attacks men as well, so we were speculating that, you know, he's either been trained to attack men for one reason or another, but the good news is he's been caught. You know, there's a lot of conversations
and what
around...
are they going to do with him?
Well, I don't know, but he has a little sort of thing on his ankle which shows that he was once perhaps in a bird of prey show or something like that.